Have you ever wondered what your life is truly built upon? Not the walls that surround you, or the plans written on your calendar, but the quiet, unseen foundation beneath your days? Each of us builds, slowly, faithfully, sometimes without realizing it. We build with choices, with words, with what we trust most. Some foundations are made of shifting sands, the approval of others, fleeting success, fragile security. Others are built on something deeper, stronger, eternal. Tonight, we'll journey into one of Jesus' most timeless parables, the story of the wise and foolish builders. It's a gentle reflection on what it means to build a life that can endure both the sunlight and the storm. As we begin, take a slow breath and let your body soften into stillness. Let the noise of the day fall quietly away. The world can wait. This moment is yours, a sacred pause between what has been and what is yet to come. In this stillness, picture a small home being built at the edge of a quiet sea. You can almost hear the rhythm of the waves, the creak of wooden beams, the hum of tools against stone. Each strike, each measure, a choice of where to place faith. It's not just a story about houses, it's about hearts. About what we stand on when life begins to shake. Before we begin this gentle walk through Scripture, take a moment to join this growing circle of peace, a small community of hearts who gather each night under the whisper of faith. If these stories bring you comfort or rest, take a quiet moment to like this video, subscribe for more nightly reflections, and share where you're listening from tonight in the comments below. Your words and presence help keep this space warm and growing, a place where faith meets rest. Now, as you settle deeper into the quiet, imagine the warmth of candlelight flickering across your room. Shadows dance softly against the walls, and the world begins to slow, each heartbeat a reminder of the gentle rhythm of grace. Let your thoughts drift toward the teacher by the sea. His voice calm, his words simple yet strong. The evening sun paints the water gold, and people gather on the hillside, drawn not by spectacle, but by truth. He speaks of two builders, two homes, two very different outcomes. And though the story is ancient, its meaning still hums through time like a quiet echo, inviting each listener to look inward. To ask softly, what am I building my life upon? As the waves lap against the shore, a breeze moves gently through the grass. The teacher's words drift like music, soothing, steady, and filled with quiet power. They will not rush, they will rest within the heart. And in that peace, a seed is planted, a seed of understanding that will grow, part by part, through this story tonight. So rest your mind now. Breathe deeply once more. Let the day exhale and fade away. The light of faith will guide us. The story of the builders will show us that strength is not found in stone alone, but in the trust that holds it firm. Now, take a slow breath. And when you're ready, let's begin the journey. The evening sun hung low over the waters of Galilee. A golden hush rested upon the land, and the breeze that moved across the hillside carried the faint scent of salt and olive trees. The crowd had gathered again, men and women, children on their parents' laps, farmers with soil still clinging to their hands, travelers from distant towns who had followed the sound of a voice unlike any other. Jesus stood where the earth met the sea. He spoke not with thunder, but with calm. Each word felt like a drop of cool water upon dry hearts. The people leaned closer, as though afraid the wind might steal his words away. And when he began to speak of builders, the crowd stilled completely, even the waves seemed to quiet their rhythm. He told of two men who decided to build homes. One, wise and patient, searched the land until he found a rock, firm, unmoving, eternal. The other, eager and confident, chose the soft sand along the shore. The sand was smooth, easy to shape, and for a while it seemed perfect. They both worked under the same sun. Each laid out his plan with care. Each dreamed of warmth and shelter, of rest and belonging. To the eye, the houses would soon look alike, walls strong, roofs bright in the sunlight, doors opening to the same gentle breeze. But beneath those walls, beneath the laughter and the light, one foundation stood on something unshakable, and the other on something that would not last. As Jesus spoke, people glanced toward the lake. The shoreline shimmered, beautiful and calm, but they knew how quickly that peace could change. They had seen storms rise suddenly, winds sweeping from the desert, waves swelling without warning, rain falling so heavy it seemed the heavens were breaking open. Everyone listening understood what a storm could do. But Jesus was speaking of something deeper than weather. He was speaking of the soul. The wise builder, he said, is the one who hears his words and lives by them. Not only in calm seasons, but through every trial, every night of doubt, every unseen test of faith. The foolish builder hears the same words, but builds without them, trusting in ease, in appearance, in the comfort of sand. The crowd listened, eyes soft, heart searching. Each felt the weight of his message, not as judgment, but as invitation. To build wisely was not a burden, it was a gift. A way to live that would endure both sunlight and storm. Behind them, the lake caught the light of the setting sun. Ripples turned to gold, and the first stars began to stir in the quiet blue of evening. The people did not speak. Some closed their eyes, letting his words settle like gentle rain upon the soil of their hearts. And though they did not yet know it, this simple parable would outlast the stones around them. It would travel through centuries, through voices and languages and generations, still whispering the same truth. That the strength of a life is not found in its beauty, but in what lies beneath it. The teacher's gaze lifted toward the sky, as if looking beyond time itself. And in his calm expression, there was both tenderness and certainty. He knew the storms would come, for them, for us, for every heart that walks the earth. Yet he also knew the rock beneath those storms, and the peace that waits for those who build upon it. The crowd slowly began to rise, children leaning against their mothers, men brushing dust from their sandals, the sound of the waves resuming its soft rhythm against the shore. But something in them had shifted, a quiet realization that every choice, every word, every act of love or neglect, was another brick laid upon their foundation. And somewhere in the gathering dusk, a few hearts whispered a silent promise, to build on something that would last. Now the night deepens. Let the image linger, the teacher by the sea, the people in stillness, the parable resting like a seed within the soil of faith. Take another slow breath, and let the peace of that moment rest upon you. The story continues beyond the shore, into the hearts of those who listened, and the builders who began their work. The sun dipped lower behind the Galilean hills. Its final light brushed across faces turned toward the teacher, faces lined by years, by labor, by longing. Every soul gathered there seemed to hold its breath, drawn closer not by command, but by compassion. Jesus' voice carried softly over the still air, clear enough for the distant fisherman to hear, gentle enough for the smallest child to rest against it like a lullaby. He spoke not as a scribe or a scholar, but as one who knew the hearts of those who listened. Each word held weight, not of law, but of love. Each phrase touched the tender places where hope and fear quietly meet. The people leaned closer. Some sat upon stones, others knelt in the grass. There was no rush, no crowd pressing to leave, for his words made time itself seem to slow. In every sentence, there was something living, a pulse, a warmth, a truth that recognized the truth within them. He spoke again of the two builders. Not as rivals, not as enemies, but as mirrors of the human heart. Both desired safety. Both sought belonging. Both wanted to make something that would last. But one built his life upon the rock, on the teachings that reach beneath circumstance, anchored deep in obedience and trust. The other built upon sand, on ease, comfort, appearances. Things that change with the wind. Those gathered understood the weight of the image. They had seen what storms could do. They had watched rain tear through valleys, turning pathways into rivers and strong walls into dust. But as Jesus continued, they realized he was not warning them of weather, he was inviting them into wisdom. Because every heart, every home, every soul, faces both calm and storm. Faith, he said without saying, is not built in the moment of crisis. It is built long before, in quiet choices, in hidden acts of obedience, in the daily rhythm of listening and trusting, even when the skies are clear. A fisherman in the crowd bowed his head. He had known the sea's moods, how quickly the horizon could darken, how swiftly calm waters could betray him. He thought of his own home, his children's laughter, the fragile peace of ordinary days. And he felt it, the longing to build something that could not be swept away. Nearby, a woman wiped her eyes. Her life had been marked by loss, her house often filled with silence instead of song. But in the teacher's voice, she heard a promise, that there is still a way to rebuild, even when the ground feels uncertain. The parable was simple, but it reached deeper than stories often do. It did not demand grand gestures or flawless lives. It asked for something quieter, a heart willing to listen, a soul willing to be shaped. And as the crowd leaned closer, something unseen began to happen. They were being built, stone by stone, within themselves. Every word a cornerstone, every truth a beam of support, every pause a breath of peace filling the foundation of their faith. Jesus' gaze passed gently over the faces before him. He saw the weary and the proud, the strong and the broken, the certain and the searching, and loved them all the same. He spoke so each might find their reflection in the story. The wise builder who endures, the foolish builder who learns, and the patient God who waits for both. The air grew still. The waves whispered against the rocks, as if echoing his message, steady, rhythmic, eternal. And for a moment, every heart on that hillside was quiet. No one argued. No one questioned. They simply listened and believed. Because deep within them, a voice, older than time, began to stir. Build here. Build upon me. Oi. Now imagine the scene as twilight begins to fall. The crowd slowly disperses, the light softens, and Jesus remains for a moment, watching the horizon fade into stars. In that silence, the lesson rests, not just for them, but for you. For every listener who wonders what holds their world together when the wind begins to rise. For faith is not found in the loudness of belief, but in the quiet strength beneath it. In what remains when everything else fades. So let the story rest in you tonight, not as instruction, but as invitation. A call to pause, to look gently inward, and ask once more, what am I building upon? The night deepens softly now. The stars shimmer like candles in the sky, and peace drifts over the water. The story continues, from the hearts of those who listened to the builders who began their quiet work. Morning light opened like a quiet prayer over the shoreline. Mist rose from the water in pale ribbons, drifting across tide-smoothed stones, and the first birds stitched the sky with soft wings. Far from the crowd and their evening hush, the parable seemed to step out of story and into sight. Two builders came to a place where land met sea, the same bay, the same wind, the same horizon, yet they looked upon it with different eyes. The first builder stood still for a long time. He listened to the earth the way a shepherd listens for the heartbeat of his flock. He knelt to touch the ground, pressing fingers into soil, then into stone. He watched how the tide pushed and then yielded, how the wind shifted and settled, how the cliff did not move, not even for the sea's oldest songs. His gaze followed a spine of bedrock that ran like a promise beneath the hill. There, a place where depth met daylight, where hidden strength rose quietly to meet the open world. He did not hurry. He measured with patience that looked like prayer. Every step was a question, every pause an answer. The second builder moved with swifter confidence. He loved the sweep of the beach, the sparkle of sand that slipped like silk beneath his feet. He pushed a stake into the shore and smiled at how easily it sank. The ground was cooperative, welcoming, pliable to the hand. He could imagine walls rising quickly, rooms catching the sea breeze, a porch looking out to the glittering blue. Ease felt like blessing. And the heart loves what does not resist. By midday, the sun warmed both men. They shared the same light, the same air, the same hope to make a shelter against the world. From a distance, their dreams seemed twins. But deep below the visible, their choices parted like two rivers after a bend. The first builder began to clear the topsoil from the rock. He worked slowly, carving channels for water to run, anchoring beams to the stone's ribs. There was a sweetness in the labor, not because it was light, but because every strike of the mallet answered doubt with certainty. The stone did not flatter. It did not make things easy. It simply held. And in that holding, the builder felt his own breath deepen, his own spirit steady. Work and worship began to share a single rhythm. The second builder drove posts into the sand and admired the quick progress. Walls sketched themselves by evening. Friends passing by nodded approval. Even the ocean seemed to applaud, laying itself flat and bright in the afternoon calm. He told himself that life is short and beauty should be simple, that the future will surely treat a peaceful shore with peace. He saw no need to dig where the eye could not admire. Why wrestle with rock when the sand was generous and the view perfect? A child wandered near the first builder and asked with unspoken, wondering eyes why the house was taking so long. The man smiled, brushed the dust from his hands, and merely pointed to the rock, its grain, its age, its uncomplaining strength. The child touched it and felt the cool patience of the earth. Even youth, which prefers speed, can recognize the comfort of something that will not slip away. Nearby, the second builder lifted the first frame of his door and set it square to the sea. He squinted along the line of the shore, pleased with the symmetry of dream and deed. He pictured lamps glowing inside, the table laid, friends laughing while dusk braided lilac into the sky. All of it was beautiful in his mind. And there is nothing wrong with beauty. But beauty without depth is a mirage that fades when heat draws near. The day bent toward evening. Thin clouds came like veils across the sun, and the wind found a cooler voice. The rock-born house remained a sketch tied to the ancient spine beneath it, while the sand-born house looked almost ready for its roof. To a hurried passerby, the second seemed wise, results gleaming, corners crisp, a promise nearly fulfilled. Only the patient eye could see that one home was marrying itself to the land, while the other was courting only the light. The first builder kept shaping the meeting places, where post met stone, where beam met breath, where prayer met plan. At times, the work resisted him. Chisels rang, hands ached, sweat cooled on his back like dew. Yet within the difficulty, a quiet gladness grew. Hard does not mean hopeless. Hard often means holy, an invitation to fasten life to what endures. The second builder, by lamplight now, traced the outline of his rooms. Shadows wove across new walls like tapestries. He stood in the center and listened to the hush of the sea, and he felt safe, because the night was kind, and the tide obedient. He told himself that tomorrow would look much like today. Somewhere beyond the headland, the first threads of weather gathered, not yet a storm, only a subtle thickening of the horizon, a deeper seam along the surface of the world. The gulls noticed first, arching higher, tucking their calls into the wind. The reeds at the marsh's edge nodded a little more tightly to one another, as if sharing news. But along the bay, lamps were lit, bread was broken, and the human heart, that great forgetter, rested in the kind illusion that calm is forever. Back at the rock, the builder laid his final anchors for the day and sat in the doorway that wasn't yet a door. He watched the sky finish its prayer in colors the sea quietly repeated. He thought of the teacher's words, not as rules, but as rain that makes fields possible. He knew storms would come, he had seen seasons turn, harvests lean, friends weep. So he fastened his hope where loss could not reach it. He built as if tomorrow were already testing today, as if love itself had asked him to be ready. Back at the sand, the other builder stretched on a woven mat and smiled at the sweetness of progress. He dreamed of morning, of waking to gull song, of stepping barefoot onto a floor that felt like warm shore. His plans were to finish quickly, to fill his rooms with laughter, to watch the tide from a chair by the window. He did not dislike wisdom, he simply did not think he needed it yet. The sand had been kind. The sea, friendly. The sky, gentle. What could ask for more? Night sank deeper. Stars opened their patient eyes. Somewhere, a shepherd drew his cloak against a rising whisper of cool. The moon lifted, steady as blessing, and wrote a pale road across the water. If one stood far back on the hill and looked down, both houses glowed with the same small courage against the dark. 2 hearths, 2 hopes, 2 songs learning to be homes. But the hill knew what the eye forgot, where each house touched the heart of the earth. For foundations are vows, not surfaces. They are promises made in secret to the future. I will hold when you are tired. I will not move when you are afraid. I will keep your story when the wind tries to scatter it. The rock could make such promises. The sand, despite its beauty, could not. Near midnight, the wind turned once, then twice, as if testing its own strength. A faint line of cloud stitched itself from west to east, and the air tasted of iron and rain. The first builder, half asleep, felt the change the way a tree feels winter approaching, not with fear, but with knowledge. He rose, checked his tools, and ran a hand across the anchored beam. The touch was not worry, it was gratitude. He lay down again with the peace of work that has told the truth. The second builder slept lightly, dreaming of rooms finished and garlands on the lintel. Outside, the sand held its breath. It is the way of soft things to be loyal until they cannot. Before dawn, the sea drew a little closer, as if to listen. The first cold drops of a distant rain tested the dust. Somewhere above the bay, thunder rehearsed a line it would later deliver in full voice. No crisis yet, only beginnings. In that grey hour when night loosens but day has not yet taken hold, the world often tells the truth most clearly. What is strong is quiet. What will last is seldom hurried. And what seems easy asks a price later. When the light finally lifted, the 2 builders rose. Both stretched their arms to the morning, both stepped into work, both believed in their homes. From the path on the ridge, travelers saw only diligence and hope. But the earth saw covenants, one with depth, one with display. And the sea, keeper of long memories, held its counsel and waited. So the parable breathed in open air. 2 men, 2 choices, 1 shore. One married his house to the spine of the land, the other courted the applause of a compliant surface. Both loved comfort. Only one loved the truth enough to bind himself to it. And the lesson, gentle as dawn and firm as bedrock, began to settle in the heart. Foundations are formed before the weather. Strength is chosen in quiet hours. Wisdom often looks slow until time proves it swift. Let this rest with you now. Like a hand on the shoulder, like a stone warm from the sun. There is a rock beneath all things, not harsh, not proud, simply faithful. To build upon it is to let peace travel upward through every beam and breath, until even the windows learn to hold the light without fear. For many days, the weather remained kind. The sea wore a garment of silver blue, calm as a mirror held to the heavens. The air was fragrant with salt and sunlight, and even the shadows seemed to rest lightly upon the sand. It was the kind of peace that makes the heart believe it will last forever. Both builders worked in that sweetness of calm. The first, upon the rock, moved with patience, his hands steady, his breath even. The rhythm of his hammer echoed softly through the cliffs, a heartbeat of diligence in the quiet morning air. Every strike carried intention, every pause honored the wisdom of foundation. He was not racing toward completion, he was deepening trust with every stone. The second builder, on the sand, worked with joy too, but his joy came from speed, from the beauty rising before him. Walls now framed doorways, windows open toward the sea, and the scent of fresh timber mingled with salt wind. Children from nearby villages ran past his home and pointed with delight. "Look how beautiful it is," they said. And truly, it was. In the soft light of afternoon, the house gleamed like a shell polished by time. The builder smiled, pleased that his vision had taken form so easily. There was pride in his heart, gentle, harmless pride, the kind that says, "I have done well, the world will see it." The days followed one another in a rhythm of grace. The tide rolled in and out, leaving thin silver lines of foam that glowed beneath the moonlight. In the evenings, lamps flickered from both homes, their small golden lights reflected on the water like twin stars fallen to earth. The world looked fair and orderly, each man content beneath the same patient sky. And it is often this way before a storm. When everything appears settled, balanced, secure. When comfort wraps itself around the soul, whispering that such calm will never change. But peace without preparation is a fragile thing. It hums like glass when the wind first begins to press against it. One night, as the moon rose high and round, a faint tremor touched the edge of the sea. The wise builder noticed it, not with fear, but with understanding. He looked toward the horizon and saw how the clouds gathered low, layer upon layer, like folded silk turning to stone. The wind shifted slightly, carrying a voice he recognized, the voice of coming rain. He rose from his resting place and walked the perimeter of his home. He touched each beam, each joint, testing their truth against the stillness. Everything held firm. He breathed a prayer of quiet gratitude, not asking for protection, but thanking God for the foundation already given. Then he returned inside, closed his eyes, and let the steady beat of the waves lull him into trust. At the same hour, the other builder stood by his window, watching the moon trace silver light across the sand. He smiled at the beauty of it all, the house complete, the sea gentle, the air soft enough to make him forget the sound of thunder altogether. He had heard stories of storms, but they felt distant, tales for fishermen or for those who lived further inland. Here, where the sea sang lullabies, it was hard to imagine such violence. He took a deep breath of the salt air and whispered, "Tomorrow will be just as calm." And with that comfort, he drifted into sleep. Morning came with a brilliance that made the night's unease seem foolish. The sea was calm again, the sky dressed in white clouds like linen. Children played along the shore, gulls circled overhead, calling out as though to bless the day. The wise builder smiled, for he knew peace is not a trick, it is a mercy, and even a calm day is a gift when built upon the right foundation. The foolish builder smiled too, for everything seemed to prove him right. He walked along the porch he had finished the evening before, listened to the laughter of his neighbors, and thought, "Surely I have built well." And indeed, both homes were beautiful in the light, the kind of beauty that deceives no one except the one who trusts it too deeply. In the evenings that followed, the wind began to change. It came from the west now, colder, carrying the breath of places unseen. The reeds along the shore bent more sharply, and the song of the gulls took on a restless note. But to the human heart, accustomed to peace, the signs seemed too small to matter. So life went on. The wise builder tended his home, repairing, reinforcing, preparing in quiet faith. He knew storms are not enemies, only teachers that reveal what we've truly built. The foolish builder decorated his home instead, adding bright cloths to the windows, smooth stones along the path. He loved beauty, and beauty is no sin. But beauty cannot anchor walls. Then, one twilight, as the last embers of the sun faded behind the hills, the first gust of the coming storm swept over the bay. It was not violent yet, only curious, a wind that tugged gently at doors and carried whispers through the reeds. The wise builder heard it and smiled faintly. He had known it would come. He closed his shutters, checked the fastenings once more, and sat beside the lamp in prayer. Outside, the rock beneath him hummed like a deep note of assurance. The foolish builder paused, looked out his window at the bending grass, and felt a flicker of unease. But when the wind softened again, he laughed quietly to himself. "It's only the season changing," he said. And he returned to his table, to his meal, to the glow of his lamps. That night, the moon hid its face behind cloud. The air grew thick and warm, and somewhere far beyond the horizon, thunder rumbled like a warning wrapped in distance. Rain had not yet come, but the scent of it lingered, that electric fragrance that says, something is near. The wise builder lay down to rest. The foolish builder lit another candle. 2 men, 2 hearts, 2 homes waiting in the half-light of what would soon unfold. And above them both, the heavens gathered their strength, not in anger, but in truth. Because storms are not sent to destroy what is built on love, but to reveal where love was missing. The beauty before the storm is a mercy, a pause offered by grace, a last quiet moment to listen to the wind's soft warning. It is the stillness that teaches us that peace is not found in calm skies, but in a steady heart when the skies begin to move. Let this peace rest upon you now. The calm before your own storms, the assurance that what is built on truth will not crumble when the world begins to shake. For beneath every wave, beneath every wind, beneath even the silence that follows the storm, there is still the rock, unbroken, unmoved, everlasting. The morning opened with a hush that felt almost thoughtful. Light seeped along the rim of the sea like milk poured into a dark bowl, and the first color of day lay thin upon the water. Yet beneath that pale calm, something had shifted, a quiet readiness in the air, a subtle deepening of distance where the horizon met the world. Even the gulls curved lower, as if to read the handwriting of wind along the waves. The wise builder rose before the full day and stood in his doorway, the stone cool beneath his bare feet. The rock sent up its wordless steadiness, not a boast, not a challenge, simply a presence that had kept its promises over ages. He listened to the thin reeds clatter softly in the marsh, to the hush of the tide drawing back with a longer breath than usual, to the new voice in the trees, a narrow whistle knitting leaf to leaf. There was no fear in him. Awareness, yes, the tender attention that faith learns when it stops arguing with the weather and begins to prepare for it. He walked the boundary of his home. Fingers moved along the beam where oak met iron, pausing at each, fastening the way a shepherd counts the flock at dusk. He followed the water channels he had cut, tracing their path to the slope where runoff would slide harmlessly away. Hand upon stone, he breathed slow and even. The foundation did not answer back. It didn't need to. What holds does not beg to be believed. It simply offers its strength and waits. Downshore, the house on sand wore the morning like a garment of brightness. Windows caught the pale sun and returned it in soft coins of light across the floor. The foolish builder stretched, pleased by the view that framed the sea as if the world itself had been built to be admired from his table. He noticed the coolness riding the wind, the way the air seemed to carry a metal edge, like the scent that lingers when a storm has a thought it isn't ready to speak. He stood a moment longer, then told himself the same line piece always whispers before it is shaken: it will pass. Ease is a fluent storyteller. It can narrate 100 reasons not to anchor deeply, not to check the posts, not to ask what the ground is quietly saying. Beauty agrees and nods, and together they compose a lullaby that lets a soul go back to sleep. He ran a palm along the newly planed lintel and smiled at its smoothness. Walls stand tallest in their own imagination, and imagination, generous friend that it is, can hide the tremble of the earth below. By mid-morning, the first scouts of weather arrived, thin, high messengers threading white through the blue. They looked harmless, almost decorative, the kind of clouds that make children draw sheep in the sky. Yet behind them, a broader band gathered, the way a river braids itself and then remembers it is one. The sea felt it first. Its skin roughened into a faint grain, as if a hand had raked it lightly. The color darkened from silver to steel, not all at once, but by shades, a quiet steeping. Villagers along the path tugged their cloaks closer. A woman who kept fish in salt looked up from her work and stilled, holding a pinch of crystals mid-air. A boy dropped his reed flute song and listened with body more than ear. Old men glanced at the notch where two hills met, the mouth by which storms often came, and they nodded without speaking, the way those who have survived many winters nod at one another. The wise builder brought his tools inside, not in panic, but with a settled care that matched the day's intention. He barred the shutters, leaving one window cracked to speak with the wind. He laid a cloth upon the table and set a lamp, though lantern light would not be needed for hours. Some preparations are not about necessity, they are about posture, the soul deciding where and how it will stand when the sky begins to talk in a louder voice. He paused, hands open, and let a prayer form without words. Trust does not always speak, sometimes it rests like a stone in the chest, weighty, good, right. Outside, the rock underfoot answered with its silence, which is to say with its faithfulness. On the sand, the other builder watched a ripple of shadow skim the shallows and fade. He felt that quick, bright flicker of doubt that visits every heart when the wind tilts. He considered bracing the door, walking the perimeter, checking the stakes. Then he noticed the gleam his new oil gave the table, the way his tapestry breathed a soft curve in the draught, and his thoughts settled into admiration again. The mind loves to sit where the light is friendly. He told himself that storms announce themselves with trumpets and banners, that he would know when the time came. Besides, the day still offered its sweet common gifts: bread to cut, a jug of cool water, the slow companionship of ordinary tasks. He let those gifts become reasons to delay wisdom. Delay seldom calls itself delay. It names itself rest, or balance, or harmless optimism. It is sand inside the hourglass pretending not to fall. By afternoon the gathering clouds lowered into something that could be read with the hands. Wind combed the grasses into one direction and erased the lines of smaller breezes. Waves stood up straighter, their edges glassy, their shoulders squaring before they folded. From behind the western headland came a sound like a door closing in a far room. Not thunder, not yet, only a deep remembering. The wise builder wrapped a strip of cloth around a beam where it might creak against the wall, not because the sound could harm the structure, but because peace is also a kind of stewardship. He checked the lintel once more. He pressed against the frame and felt the push back. A small smile touched his mouth, not triumph, not pride, just the gratitude of work aligned with truth. He sat, finally, and let stillness sit with him. In his mind, the teacher's story breathed again, not as tale but as living counsel. Everyone who hears these words and puts them into practice. He felt the shape of obedience in his bones, not a stiff shape, but a supple one, like a tree that has learned the grammar of wind. Obedience had taught his hands how to fasten, his feet where to stand, his heart when to be quiet. On the shore, the house on sand wore the first fine spray upon its steps. A rush of darker water slid up and retreated with a hiss, leaving a lace of foam that clung longer than usual. He noticed. Yes, how could he not? But noticing is not the same as deciding. He told himself he would brace the door after the meal, he would check the stakes after the errand, he would test the frame after the wind settled into its true direction. After, a word that folds time back on itself until it becomes a net. A neighbor passing on the ridge raised a hand and called something about the sky. He waved back with a bright, easy grin, and the neighbor, satisfied with courtesy, moved on. Warnings can be carried past like baskets if the heart has no place to set them down. Late day arrived with a pewter sheen. Colors simplified, the greens of grass darkened to one tone, the blue of the sea concentrated to a single deep note. Even the birds seemed to choose fewer paths, as if the air's map had been redrawn. A line of cloud like a low wall unfurled from headland to headland. Beneath it, smaller curtains of rain could be seen in the distance, greying the sea where they fell. The storm had not yet taken the bay in its hands, but it was clearing its throat. The wise builder lit his lamp early. Flame leaned and then recovered, a small sermon in the language of fire, bow and rise, bow and rise. He listened to the first heavy drop knock the shutter and slide away, the way a traveler taps a door before entering. A slow cadence began upon the roof, sparse at first, like a shepherd counting a scattered flock. Then a second cadence, lower, as the wind found the eaves and learned their music. Inside, peace gathered itself around him like a cloak from an older brother, a fit earned by love rather than size. He thought of those he loved along the village lane and prayed their homes would hold, their hearts would not be startled into forgetting what is true. He remembered that storms are not personal, even when they feel intimate. They visit every field and every roof without a list. What differs is not the wind's intention, but the ground's answer. Along the beach, a fine sand, newly teased from the dune's lip, began to move in braided lines, slanting across the porch as though the shore itself were walking. The builder on the sand stood in his doorway at last, the first fullness of rain striking his face with a cool, eager rhythm. The beauty he had loved so easily remained, the silver of water, the eloquence of clouds, but it had put on a different face. Beauty knows how to wear severity when it must. A gust made the shutters thrum, and the sound landed in him like a question waiting to be answered. He fetched a length of rope, tied one hinge, then paused, pulled by the habit of underestimating what he did not wish to weigh. The rope hung slack in his hand a moment, then he set it aside to check the window where the view was best. Through glass beaded with rain, the world looked softened, merciful. Mercy is true, but it is not the same as structure. The first small rivulets crept from under the porch, nibbling at the posts that pleased him so just days before. Water loves an easy path. So does worry. Neither must shout to do their work, they simply continue. Evening gathered all at once, as it does on a day that has decided to shorten itself. The horizon dissolved, the sea and sky spoke in one dark syllable. Wind arrived with a purposeful hand, flattening the grass in long strokes, pressing the water into rows that moved with soldierly resolve. The first real thunder shouldered its way across the distance, not the scattered rehearsal of afternoon, but the sentence placed at the beginning of a chapter. Inside the rock-anchored house, the wise builder closed his eyes and let the sounds arrange themselves, rain on roof, wind on shutter, beam answering beam with a low, satisfied hush. The structure did not deny the storm, it conversed with it. Depth allows dialogue. Shallow things only echo. His heart, practiced in slow breathing, moved with the storm instead of against it. He was not trying to win, he was trying to remain. Faith's victory is often simply endurance with love still intact. Across the shore, the sandroom brightened and dimmed as clouds ran their courses in front of the last light. The builder touched the frame and felt it quiver. Not failing, not yet, but telling the truth. He whispered inwardly that he would do more tomorrow. Tomorrow is a beautiful country where the work that saves us is always eager to live. But storms are today creatures. They ask to be met, not imagined. Another gust, longer, pushed at the door. A seam of cold crept along the floor, and tiny grains ticked past his heel like time hurrying. He lifted a chair against the latch and listened for the comfort of an answer. Chairs are faithful in their way, but faithfulness cannot bestow what only foundations can give. Night deepened, and with it the instructional kindness of weather. Rain found new paths and practiced them. Wind learned the measure of each wall. The sea, called by a pressure the land could not see, rose to meet its calling. It was not rage. It was not cruelty. It was the plainness of a world that remains honest even when the heart prefers a gentler story. And within that honesty, the lesson grew clear as lamplight upon a table. The wise do not fear the gathering clouds. They read them, prepare under them, and bless the God who remains beneath them. The foolish are not wicked, they are distracted, lovers of a surface that seems to keep its word, until it doesn't. Both are seen. Both are loved. But love is not flattery, it is invitation. To fasten deeper. To anchor where the tide cannot bargain. To set the soul upon the rock whose patience is older than storm. Let the sound of the rain become your metronome now. Slow, steady, kind. Let the breath come and go like tide upon safe shore. The gathering clouds are not the end of peace, they are the doorway through which peace becomes honest and strong. Beneath the wind's long sentences and the sea's lifted voice, the rock abides, gentle, immense, unwavering. And the heart that learns to stand upon it will find, even in the gathering, the promise of rest. It began not with thunder, but with stillness. That fragile, waiting quiet, the kind that settles before change, when even the air seems to hold its breath. The sea, once playful and bright, now lay beneath a veil of grey light. Each wave moved slower, heavier, as if the deep itself were thinking. Birds that had wheeled freely hours ago now found refuge in crevices of cliff and roof, their cries replaced by silence. A silence that spoke. Then came the first sound. Soft, almost tender. A single drop landing upon the roof of the wise man's house. Then another. And another. Like the slow counting of an unseen clock. The rhythm built gently, not angry, not wild, just steady, as though the sky had chosen to teach through patience. Inside, the wise builder looked up. He had heard this music before, the hymn of rain. Each note a reminder that preparation is worship, that obedience is peace before the storm arrives. He sat by his lamp, the flame bending and returning with each breath of wind. The walls whispered softly, their timbers firm, their stones answering the rain with calm. Outside, rivulets began to trace new paths along the slope, but they met the carved channels he had made long ago, and the water flowed harmlessly away. He closed his eyes and prayed not to be spared from the storm, but to remain true through it. Across the way, the foolish builder leaned against his window, watching the rain streak the glass in narrow threads of silver. It was beautiful, soothing even. The kind of rain that makes children sleep soundly and the sea hum like a lullaby. He smiled to himself. "See, it's nothing," he whispered. "This too will pass." But as he turned away, a faint tremor passed beneath his feet, a shiver he barely noticed. The sand shifted slightly with each drop. Not enough to startle, just enough to remind the earth that it was soft. Outside, puddles began to form, thin mirrors that caught the flicker of his lamps. They rippled as the rain grew bolder, the rhythm faster now, a song that was learning its own power. The wind rose next. It came not like an intruder, but like a messenger long delayed. It ran its fingers through the grass, tested the edges of doors and shutters, and whistled low through the valley. The wise builder heard it and smiled softly, his heart matching the pace of each gust, slow, surrendered, steady. He spoke quietly into the room. "Here you are, Lord. Still with me." The foolish builder lit another candle. The flame wavered, its light dancing wildly upon the walls. A window latch loosened and clattered. He frowned, adjusted it, and for a moment, all was calm again. He poured himself water, listened to the steady rain, and let the familiar comfort of denial lull him. After all, the storm was not yet violent, just persistent. And sometimes persistence is how truth arrives. By evening, the color of the world had changed. The sea wore armor now, its surface dark, its motion slow and deliberate. The hills behind the shore blurred beneath the curtain of falling rain. The sky was no longer a ceiling of light, but a vast moving body, alive, pulsing, humming with the low voice of thunder far away. The wise builder placed his hand upon the wall again. It was cool, firm, alive with the deep vibration of weather meeting strength. He felt not fear, but reverence, as though creation itself were bowing before the power of its maker. He whispered, "You command the storm, and it obeys. You speak, and even the waves know your name." A flash of lightning carved the sky, white, silent, immediate. Then the sound followed, a rolling echo that seemed to gather the whole valley in its arms. The lamp flickered. The wind pressed hard once, and the timbers groaned, not in distress, but in dialogue with the world outside. He sat still, breathing slowly. Peace, real peace, is not the absence of storm. It is the presence of trust in the middle of it. In the house upon the sand, a draught slipped beneath the door. The flame of the candle fluttered wildly, casting trembling shadows upon the walls. The builder moved to close the shutters, but the first strong gust caught them, snapping the hinges with a sound that startled him into stillness. He pushed them closed, heart pounding, and laughed nervously to himself. "Just wind," he said aloud, as though naming it softly could tame it. But the wind was not listening. It had found its path, and the sea was following its lead. Waves rolled higher, their edges curling white under the dim light of a veiled moon. Each crash sent a tremor through the sand, a deep pulse that moved beneath the foundations of his home. He did not yet see the danger. He only felt unease, a whisper in his bones that the world was changing faster than he was. Hours passed. The rain no longer sang softly. It struck now, urgent and relentless. The wise builder watched through a narrow gap in his shutter as the wind drove sheets of water sideways across the land. Lightning stitched the sky again and again, revealing glimpses of the sea rising like a restless beast. And yet, his home stood unmoved. The rock held firm. And in that steadiness, he felt the mercy of all his past obedience, every day of patience, every hour of preparation, every quiet moment of choosing faith over ease. He whispered again, "Thank you for teaching me to build on you." Oi! The foolish builder did not pray. He shouted over the roar, trying to fasten what the wind had already claimed. A beam moaned, a shutter tore away, and cold rain entered through the gap, spattering across the table. He reached for the rope he had left behind earlier, his hands trembling, his heart pounding in rhythm with the thunder. But the sand beneath the posts was already shifting, slowly, invisibly, with every crash of wave. And still, he told himself it would pass. We always do, until it doesn't. The first drops had become a flood now, but within that flood lived a lesson. Storms reveal foundations, not just structures. Rain is not punishment, it is truth made visible. And truth, though it shakes, is always merciful. For it calls us back to what cannot be moved. The wise builder sat through the night, his eyes closed, his heart steady in prayer. Each sound outside became part of the liturgy, wind as chorus, rain as rhythm, thunder as reminder. And somewhere deep within, he felt a peace that had nothing to do with weather, the kind of peace that only trust can build. Let that peace find you now. The first drops of your own storms may fall, but you are not alone in them. There is a rock beneath you, unseen but unshakable. And every wave that meets it only proves how strong it has always been. When the storm finally found its full voice, it did not arrive with chaos first. It arrived with order, a measured cadence, a gathering pulse, the way a choir breathes together before a hymn. Wind leaned into the valley, and the valley answered. The sea lifted its shoulders, and the sky replied. Creation, vast and ancient, spoke in one language, and every roof, every reed, every stone learned its part. The first long gust pressed against the land like a careful hand testing a door. Shutters bowed and returned, a wooden prayer, bend, then rise. Rain, once scattered, turned to sheets and then to rivering ropes, threading the air from cloud to earth. Where paths had been, water traced new paths. Where dust had settled, the ground took on weight and purpose. Thunder began, not the stuttering rehearsal of distance, but the full, rolling sentence, deep enough to loosen memories hidden in bone. Lightning arrived as script, quick, clean lines scratched across the black page of night, each stroke illuminating the world for a single breath before the text dissolved again to darkness. In the house upon the rock, the wise builder listened without alarm. His walls spoke back to the wind, not with defiance, but with the modest confidence of work done in truth. Beams answered beams in low music, anchors whispered their agreement to the stone. The floor, fastened to bedrock, forgot how to tremble. Rain sought entry and found only roots he had offered it, channels carved in calmer days that now carried the wild water away like escorted guests. Inside, lamplight made a small, faithful world, a table, a cup, a folded cloth, ordinary things elevated by steadiness into sacraments of peace. He breathed with the storm's rhythm, in. As the wind drew breath, out. As the wind exhaled its force. His prayer did not compete with the thunder. It harmonized with it. The words were simple, the trust quiet, the heart anchored beyond sight. Faith did not make his house ignore the weather. Faith taught the house what to do with weather, to receive without collapse, to endure without bitterness, to remain. On the shore, the sea grew muscular. Waves clothed themselves in hard white and shouldered one another toward the beach. Breakers collapsed with a weight that turned the ground's topmost layer into a living thing, moving, slumping, crawling back and forward at the storm's command. The house upon the sand felt every commandment of water. Posts shook, not because they were weak, but because the earth they trusted did not keep its promise. Rivulets sharpened into streams that gnawed at the footings, turning the porch from firm step to tilting raft. Inside, the foolish builder hurried from latch to hinge, from rope to bar to beam, chasing answers that could only be given by what lay beneath him. The door groaned under the push of a gust, and he set his shoulder to it. The window rattled like a frightened bird, and he pressed his palm against the glass. With each task, the storm gave him back a single lesson. Surface skill cannot redeem a dishonest ground. He paused once, breath burning, and looked through rain-braided air toward the ridge. A lance of lightning showed him, for an instant, the other house, its lantern steady, its outline composed, the hillside around it shedding water the way a tree sheds autumn leaves. The vision went dark again, but the imprint remained. Some shelters are more than walls. They are covenants made with what does not move. The storm's voice grew many voices. Roof tiles sang their dull, perfect song beneath the rain's percussion. Gutters hummed. The eaves spoke in vowels the ear could not spell. Beneath all of it, the rock kept silence, not the silence of absence, but the profound quiet of fidelity. silence that had outlived 1,000 tempests and would outlive 1,000 more. A foundation does its finest work unseen, turning fear into breath and noise into liturgy. The wise builder let memory warm him, not the memory of his labor alone, but of the teacher by the lake, of words that had sounded gentle in sunlight and now revealed their iron kindness in rain. Everyone who hears these words and puts them into practice, the practice had looked like slowness to others, tonight it looked like mercy. He traced the grain of the table with a fingertip and allowed gratitude to become his rest. The storm was not his enemy. The storm was his witness. It testified to what had been loved in secret and chosen in quiet days. Out on the beach, the sand lost its shape. Dunes shivered and sank, porches sighed as their steps learned to float. Water lifted the paths he had swept and laid them elsewhere, as if rewriting the map of the shore in impatient script. The house tilted a fraction, the smallest angle, yet enough to change the language of every wall. A cup slid and found the floor. A chair walked its back legs toward the sill. He felt the shift through his ankles and into his chest, the way a shipmaster feels the keel admit a current too strong to negotiate. He was not wicked. He had not hated wisdom. He had simply built in an hour that praised speed and believed the weather would be polite. Now the weather was honest, and honesty is wet, heavy, and without apology. He looked up and tried to measure the distance from what was to what should have been. It was not far, and yet tonight it was a distance the body could not cross with rope or wood. Lightning walked the ridge again, crisp and near, stitching hill to sea with a needle of white. The crash that followed seemed to pass through everything at once: door, bone, cup, sand, like a bell rung at the center of the world. For a heartbeat, both houses were revealed in the same stark mercy of light. Two outlines cut from the same darkness, two lives under the same sky, two foundations telling their separate truths. Then the scene folded back into night, and the rain resumed its tireless handwriting. The wise builder rose, checked one last fastening, and sat again. He placed both hands, open, on the table, the posture of a servant who has finished the day's work and waits for the master's nod. Wind tried the shutters in a new key. The shutters answered that they had learned the song. The lamp bowed and stood again, bowing and standing, and he joined it with his breath. Trust, he knew, is not an argument. Trust is remaining in the right place. The storm's voice altered once more, as storms do when they tire of their first language. The big surges gave way to longer, lower voices, gusts that did not shout but insisted, rain that did not pummel but endured. Persistence has its own strength. It is persistence that erodes cliffs and hollows mountains, persistence that tests the promise beneath walls. Here the rock rejoiced and the sand confessed. Around the rock-fastened house, water braided and slipped away. The hillside had been taught how to carry burden, and it did so without complaint. Inside, the wise builder's eyes grew heavy. It is a strange grace that sleep can arrive in the middle of thunder, but grace often arrives where it seems least feasible. He did not resist it. He let the kindness of God lay a quilt over his tiredness, and the lamp kept vigil for them both. Downshore, the man on the sand did not sleep. He stood the way a soldier stands at a failing wall, filling cracks with whatever the hand can find: cloth, rope, hope, denial. Each effort bought a moment, and the moments bought nothing. A post sighed and leaned. A seam opened and admitted a thread of water that became a cord, then a rope, then a hand. He pressed against it and felt a truth bigger than his strength. The storm was not cruel. It was impartial. And impartiality can feel like cruelty when the heart has trusted what cannot keep it. He whispered into the noise, not a curse, not even a complaint, only the small confession that wears many shapes in human speech. I did not think it would be like this. The words disappeared into rain. But confession has its own thin light, even when no ear catches it. It is the first stone in a future foundation. Deep into night, the storm reached its summit and stood there like a mountain. Every element knew its strength and spent it fully. But no strength, however perfect, lasts forever. Wind began to lower its shoulders. Rain lost a little of its weight. Thunder moved further off between its sentences, leaving the valley to fill in the quiet with its own breathing. The sea kept working. Seas are slow to relent, yet even it learned a smaller stride. The storm's voice did not cease, it changed. From command to counsel. From shout to teaching. From test to memory being made. The wise builder stirred and opened his eyes. He heard the difference at once, the way a mother knows a child's breath has settled. He stood, stretched, touched the beam, and felt the house smile against his palm. Yes, smile, the deep and showy gladness of something that has done the thing it was built to do. He whispered gratitude in the language he had learned from the rock. Few words, much truth. The foolish builder slumped against the door, exhausted, wet, and awake to the nearness of morning. He sensed, before he saw, that the worst had passed. Not safety. Not triumph. Only an end to the fiercest part of the lesson. He breathed, long and shaking, and found that breath was still possible. Even here, even now, breath was possible. And where breath is possible, tomorrow may still be welcomed. So the storm spoke and was heard. It had not come to choose sides. It had come to reveal sides already chosen. It had not come to hate. It had come to teach. The wise learned the sweetness of endurance. The foolish tasted the first honest hunger for a different ground. Both were seen. Both were loved. And love, unlike sand, does not wash away. Let the receding thunder be your metronome now. Farther, softer, gentler. Let the rain's quieter fingers play the eaves while your heart learns a slower step. There is a rock beneath your story, older than storms, kinder than fear, patient with beginnings. Rest upon it. Let the storm's voice become the very lullaby that carries you toward peace. The storm had spent itself through the long hours of night. And now, as dawn began to press a pale glow across the sky, the valley exhaled. The sea was quieter, not calm yet, but humbled, its surface rippling with the faint sheen of silver light that only follows surrender. Waves rolled in gentler rhythms, their fury softened to a prayer of retreat. And upon the high ground, the house built on the rock still stood, not untouched, but unbroken. Its roof was dark with rain, its walls streaked with water and wind, but every beam, every joint, every anchored post remained as it was the day it was set. The house had not escaped the storm, it had endured it. And endurance, in the language of heaven, is the quietest form of victory. Inside, the wise builder stirred from a light sleep. The lamp had burned low through the night, its flame now a thin line of gold trembling inside its glass. He rose and stepped toward the door, laying his hand upon the wood that had held so faithfully through the darkness. It was cool beneath his touch, not a barrier, but a witness. He listened. No thunder. Only the steady drip of rain from the eaves, the long sigh of a world remembering stillness. The wind that had once roared now wandered gently through the grass, and the air smelled clean, washed of pride and noise, filled with the scent of new beginnings. He pushed the door open. It resisted slightly, swollen with the night's damp, then yielded with a quiet groan, as if acknowledging that faith itself had opened it. The morning air met him like a friend returning after a long journey. Cool, clear, alive with that rare kind of silence that is not empty, but full of meaning. The valley below was changed. Rivers had rewritten the paths of fields, trees leaned but still clung to soil, and the sky hung low with lingering clouds, pale grey, not angry anymore, just tired from the telling. Everywhere, there was the soft shimmer of renewal, as though the land itself were giving thanks for having survived. The wise builder stood upon his threshold, his gaze moving over the land and then upward, toward the rock that held his home. He could see where the storm had clawed and pushed, where rainwater had struck the slopes and been redirected by his careful hands. Every groove, every drain, every stone had done its quiet duty. No one else would ever notice, but God had. He smiled, not in pride, but in deep relief that obedience, once again, had proven stronger than fear. He spoke softly, his voice barely rising above the murmur of the retreating wind. "Thank you, Lord, for teaching me to build with you, not beside you. For giving me a place where even the storm becomes a servant of peace." Oi. Inside, the home smelled faintly of lamp oil and rain. He lit a new flame and placed it near the window. The light was steady now, unshaken, casting gold upon the stone floor like sunlight made gentle. He sat beside it, and in that stillness, he did what wise hearts always do after the storm. He remembered. He remembered the long days of digging, the hard labor of finding rock beneath the soil, the seasons of doubt when others built faster and finished sooner. He remembered the ache of waiting, the sting of words from those who had called him too cautious, too slow, too concerned with what lay beneath rather than what could be seen. And yet, here he sat, alive, safe, and grateful, not because the storm had passed quickly, but because his foundation had not moved. He thought of the teacher by the sea, the calm eyes, the voice that carried truth without weight. How simple those words had sounded then. The wise man builds his house upon the rock. He understood now that it was never about stone and structure alone. It was about the unseen architecture of trust, the soul's decision to build not upon understanding, but upon faith. Outside, the sun began to slip between clouds. It touched the wet stones with warmth, and steam rose in thin, ghostly ribbons. A few birds tested their voices again, their songs cautious but bright, as though the world were learning music anew. The wise builder stepped out into the light. He knelt and pressed his hand against the ground, not the topsoil that shifted, but the deep rock beneath. It was cool, steady, unchanged by all that had come against it. He whispered, "You are faithful, even when I am not. You hold me, even when I forget to hold you." Then he stood again, his posture neither triumphant nor weary, but settled. There is a peace that follows endurance, a peace that does not need proof, because it has already lived through the test. From the ridge, he could see the sea calming, the foam thinning, the horizon lifting. It was as though the world itself had taken a deep breath and found its rhythm again. He watched the waves bow one last time to the shore, and in that moment, he felt the same bow rise within his heart, a quiet surrender, a gratitude too deep for words. The house stood behind him, simple and strong, its lamps burning softly in the dawn. It was more than a shelter now, it was testimony. Every scar upon its walls, every droplet still clinging to its beams, was a story of God's keeping. Sometimes, what remains after a storm is not beauty in the world, but clarity in the soul. You see, finally, what matters, not the decorations, not the walls, but the unseen rock that holds it all. The wise builder smiled, and as he turned back toward his door, his steps slow and light upon the stone, he knew the truth that endures through every wind, that faith built upon God's word does not promise ease, it promises endurance, and through endurance, peace. Let the calm after the storm reach you now. The quiet dripping of water, the soft hum of renewed life, the deep assurance that what stands on truth will stand always. May your heart, too, rest upon that rock, firm beneath the shifting sands of all that changes. Morning did come to the shoreline, but it arrived like a guest walking on tired feet. Light spread in a thin band over the sea, and the waves, chastened, breathed in smaller arcs, drawing pale foam that clung to the shore as though unsure where to rest. Between that hesitant sea and the sky still heavy with leftover cloud, the house upon the sand stood changed. It had not fallen in some sudden catastrophe of night. It had bowed, in degrees, to the will of water and wind. A corner had settled, then sunk, a porch post tilted, then sighed deeper, until floorboards learned a new, reluctant slope. The window that had once framed the world like a painting now framed a lesson, a horizon at an angle, a sky that seemed to lean. Inside, the foolish builder woke to the language of aftermath. Small creaks spoke from the walls, a slow drip counted time from a seam newly born in the roof, and grit whispered beneath his heel as he rose. His home, so quickly made and so lovingly arranged, had become a map of tiny surrenders. No single surrender looked like defeat, yet taken together, they translated as danger. He stood still a long while. The kind of stillness that follows long effort, where the body realizes that nothing more can be lifted by strength alone. Rain had softened to a mist, and in that gauze of morning the house seemed almost beautiful again. Almost. Beauty can blur the edges of truth, but it cannot change the truth itself. He touched the door frame. Where would met threshold, a dark wet line had crept inward. He pressed a palm to the floor and felt chill traveling like a rumor through the boards. At the far corner, sand had mounded up from a crack, a little dune forming inside the room that once prided itself on sweeping clean. Outside, the sea drew a longer breath and exhaled a last uneven set of waves. Each lunge reached the porch, then retreated with a sucking sound that pulled at the posts, worrying them the way a tide worries a stone until it remembers it is sand. The builder went out beneath the sagging eave and followed the water's retreat with his eyes. In the blue-gray distance, a ribbon of sunlight broke through and rolled across the surface like blessing. It reached him, and then passed behind cloud again. He knelt at the nearest footing. Last week it had been straight and sure, its base buried in the shore's sweet compliance. Now the sand was scoured away on the seaward side, leaving half of the post exposed, a leg that remembered how to stand, but not where. He scraped at the hole with his hand, as if to refill it by will, but the sand collapsed back, obeying gravity more faithfully than any human plea. Neighbors appeared along the ridge path, moving in pairs, pointing here and there in the modest choreography of those who have outlived many storms. Their houses, set farther back or anchored to stone, wore the night story as a sheen rather than a wound. They waved to him, sympathy in their lifted hands. He lifted his own hand in return, then let it fall, his fingers gritty with shore. It was not shame that stung him, it was recognition. A door had opened inside him, and there on the threshold stood the simple truth he had delayed. He had built on what was lovely, not on what was loyal. He thought of yesterday's confidence, how quickly he had admired the smoothness of his lintel, the way lamps painted honey on the walls, the grace of curtains breathing with the breeze. Comfort had praised him. Appearance had agreed. Even the easy laughter of a few friends had called it wisdom. But the storm had no interest in such witnesses. Storms testify only about foundations. He rose and walked the perimeter, step by careful step, listening to the house tell him where it hurt. Here, a frame murmured in a new key. There, a seam had learned to weep. At the porch, the railing listed, a ship's mast without a captain. And under all of it, the sand, so generous, so willing to please, had remembered that its nature is to move. The mind reached for solutions. Could the posts be braced with stones scavenged from the beach? Could ropes bind the frame tighter, resisting the slow coaxing of the ground? Could trenches be dug to give the water a path that was not through the house's heart? He pictured it all, and for a moment, hope rose like the brief ribbon of sunlight on the sea. Then he understood, quietly, without drama, that every effort would be a kind of mending that assumed the cloth still held. This cloth did not. What failed was not a board or a beam. What failed was the promise the earth had made to him when he asked it to be something it was not. He leaned his shoulder against the doorpost and let the morning speak. Gulls found their voices again. Small streams from the dunes carried back the night's flood in patient silver threads. The sky loosened, and the first true blue returned like a forgiven word. Peace descended, and in that peace he felt a tenderness that surprised him. He was not hated by God. He was being taught by him. Teaching seldom shouts. It arrives as comprehension beneath the ribs, as humility that doesn't humiliate, as the invitation to begin again with truer tools. He went inside and gathered what could be carried lightly, a blanket, a clay cup, a small lamp he had loved for the way it held evening. In the corner lay the rope he had meant to use, a quiet witness to the bargain he had tried to keep with time. He coiled it and set it by the door, not for binding brokenness to sand, but for the work of departure. Departure is not defeat when it turns toward wisdom. It is an honoring of truth discovered late yet received fully. He took one last slow walk through the rooms. Each held an echo, laughter imagined, meals almost eaten, a chair that had nearly learned the shape of rest. He touched the wall and felt it answer with a tired tremble. "You did your best," his heart said to the house. But the house could not be more than its ground. He stepped out once more. The tide had drawn back to its farther measure, leaving lines of kelp and driftwood like the signatures of waves. The posts stood awkward in their exposed ankles, and the porch listed toward the sea like a lover unwilling to release a hand. He did not curse the water. He did not scold the wind. He simply bowed his head and admitted what the night had already written. Admitting is not the end of dignity. It is the beginning of alignment, soul to truth, plan to reality, hope to a foundation worthy of the name. Up on the height, the rock-anchored house watched the shore in silence. Houses do not speak, but there are moments when they seem to keep counsel with one another across distances. One steady in grateful endurance, the other learning the sorrow that becomes wisdom's doorway. Between them lay no rivalry, only the path of choice. Every heart eventually walks that path, either before the storm with patience, or after the storm with tears. God is present in both journeys. But one spares the home. The builder on the sand looked up to the ridge, and the sight did not fill him with envy. It filled him with direction. There was a place to go, a way to change, a rock that had not moved during the telling of the night. His failure had not disqualified him from that rock, it had shown him where to find it. He took the rope and the blanket and began to climb the dune toward firmer paths. Each step sank, then lifted, sank, then lifted, a prayer in the feet, a confession that became motion. Behind him, the house stood in its brave, tilted beauty, a monument to how tenderly the world indulges our haste until honesty calls us home. At the top of the dune, he paused and turned. The sea brushed the shore with white lace, the sky opened further, and the day promised a gentleness he had not expected to see again. He was grateful for it. Grateful for the mercy that follows truth, for the way light returns even to the edges of loss. He did not know what would happen next, whether the house would slump slowly into memory or stand a while as a landmark that pointed away from itself. But he knew what he would do next. He would seek the ground that keeps its word. He would learn to love difficulty if it meant depth. He would build where obedience sounded like work and felt like worship. The wind freshened, clean now, carrying the scent of wet grass from the ridge and the mineral breath of stone. Somewhere inland, a shepherd called, and the flock answered in voices that knew the difference between wandering and being led. He listened, and the sound placed a calm inside him that no storm had managed to place before. Then he walked on, not away from hope, but toward it, step by step, toward the hill where rock waits for those who have learned by weather what they would not learn by ease. Let this picture rest in your heart. The house on the sand, brave but sinking, the man on the path, chastened but rising, the rock on the ridge, patient and unchanged. Loss is not the last word when it becomes a lesson. And those who accept the teaching find a new beginning where others think all endings live. The storm had finished its song. And in the hush that followed, the land began to listen. Clouds drifted apart in tattered veils, and light returned not in brilliance, but in mercy, a softer gold that touched the soaked earth as though to say, "You've endured enough. Rest now." Down in the valley, the air smelled of rain and forgiveness. Each drop that clung to a blade of grass shimmered like a small promise kept. Birdsong began again, hesitant at first, a few notes offered cautiously into the silence, testing whether peace had truly returned. When no thunder answered, the notes multiplied, until the whole hillside hummed with a fragile, grateful life. And in that gentle rebirth of morning, a lesson, older than the world, yet new to every generation, revealed itself. Upon the rock, the wise builder stepped outside again. He stood with bare feet upon the stone, feeling its firmness, the steadiness that had carried him through the storm. Water ran in thin streams around his feet, but beneath him, the foundation remained dry, unbroken, unwavering. He closed his eyes and breathed, and in that breath was both relief and reverence. He whispered softly, "Now I understand, Lord, why you told us to build here." The words of Jesus echoed through his memory, no longer as instruction, but as revelation, alive, clear, radiant with meaning. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does them is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain fell, the floods came, the winds blew and beat upon that house, but it did not fall, for it had been founded upon the rock. He had heard those words once with his ears. Now he heard them with his soul. They were not a command to fear storms, but an invitation to trust through them. Not a warning about failure, but a map toward faithfulness. Every act of obedience, every quiet decision to listen, every unseen day of preparation, was a stone laid deep beneath the surface of the heart. And in the night when the wind had screamed its truth, those hidden stones had answered back, and they had not moved. He looked down the valley, toward the shore where the other builder's house had stood. From this height, he could see what the sea had taken, a porch now broken, walls tilted, a few pieces of timber scattered like driftwood in the sand. But he also saw movement, a figure climbing the path, slowly, steadily, a rope coiled over one shoulder, a blanket across his back. The wise builder's heart softened. There was no pride in his eyes, no smugness in his spirit. Only compassion. Because he knew that grace often begins where pride has fallen. He descended the path and met the man halfway. Neither spoke at first. The sound of water dripping from leaves and the soft hiss of the retreating sea filled the space between them. When they finally met, the man from the shore lowered his gaze. "I built quickly," he said. "I built beautifully. But I built upon what could not keep its word." The wise builder nodded. "The rock waits for all of us," he replied. "Some of us find it before the storm. Some of us find it because of the storm. But all who build upon it are safe once they do." The other man closed his eyes. A long breath escaped him, not despair, but surrender. "I will build again," he said softly. "This time, where the ground does not move." And the wise builder placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then you have already begun," he said. They walked together back up the path, and as they climbed, the world around them seemed to agree. Sunlight broke through a gap in the clouds, falling across the valley in long, golden bands. Steam lifted from the wet earth, rising like incense from the altar of creation. And every tree, every stone, every drop of water seemed to whisper the same truth, that storms do not ruin what is real, they reveal it. Faith that is true does not live above the rain, it learns to stand beneath it. It does not deny the wind, it lets the wind prove its roots. And when the clouds clear, that faith does not boast of survival, it kneels in gratitude for the God who stood within the storm all along. By the time they reached the rock, the air was brighter, and the scent of newness had replaced the salt and fear of night. The foolish builder looked upon the house that had endured and smiled through weary eyes. He did not envy it, he honored it. He touched the stone beneath his feet and felt the same steadiness that had held the other man's home. "It feels alive," he said quietly. The wise builder smiled. "It is. Everything that endures carries the breath of God in it." They stood together in silence, two men, one tested, one taught, united now by truth. Neither better than the other, both equally loved. For God's mercy is not a reward for perfection, it is a hand extended toward those willing to learn. As the day unfolded, the valley dried, the riverbank steadied, and the sea settled into rhythm once more. The world seemed to exhale its gratitude. And within that calm, the lesson shone clear as sunlight on stone. Faith that listens is faith that lasts. Obedience is not a wall, it is a root. And every storm, no matter how fierce, is only temporary, but the rock remains forever. The wise builder turned his eyes toward the horizon, where sky met sea in a silver seam. He whispered one final prayer, "May every heart learn what mine has learned, before the rain must teach it." The wind moved through the grass again, not in fury this time, but in song. And the two builders stood quietly together, letting that song wash over them, as peace, real, earned, divine, settled upon the land. Let that peace reach you too. The peace that comes not from perfect shelter, but from perfect faith. The storm has spoken. The lesson is revealed. And beneath every trial that shakes the world, the rock of God still holds steady, inviting you to build your heart upon him. They stood upon the height where the wind was clean and the light fell in quiet bands. Below, the valley still carried the sparkle of retreating rain. Above, the clouds' broken edges drifted like slow ships into a wider blue. Between the two, the rock kept its place, older than storm, older than the hands that touched it, older even than the stories men told to understand their days. The wise builder rested his palm upon that stone again, and the other did the same. Neither spoke at first. There are truths so large the tongue must shrink to let the heart see them. The stone was cool, steady, patient. It did not lift them up with display, nor answer with spectacle. It simply offered presence. And presence is the deepest promise any foundation can make. They had called it rock since childhood, but now, as the morning opened like scripture, they began to know what words cannot hold, that the rock beneath their feet was a parable with a pulse. It was not merely stone. It was obedience embodied, trust made tangible, love given weight. It was covenant translated into geology, a steadfastness that outlasted seasons and the opinions of weather. A shepherd passed along the ridge with his flock, staff tapping lightly at intervals. The sheep flowed around the men the way water meets a boulder and learns a gentler path. The shepherd nodded a greeting and moved on. Even that simple scene carried a lesson the storm had etched deeper, that guidance is safest where footing is honest, and that a gentle tap upon a firm ground is more mercy than any rush across sand. A small hawk balanced on the air above the valley, wings tilted to read the invisible grammar of wind. It held itself without hurry, trusting the currents that rose from the sun-warmed stone. The foolish builder followed its quiet mastery with his eyes and felt a tenderness he had not known in the building of his first house, a tenderness for the laws that keep the world from breaking. The rock was one of those laws. Not a rule to punish, but a truth to preserve. He spoke at last, voice low. If the rock is obedience, then every fastening is a yes. And if the rock is trust, then even our hammer blows are prayers. The wise builder smiled, not at his own endurance, but at the revelation shared. Yes, his heart said without words. He did not correct, did not lecture. Storms had already done the teaching, love would now do the keeping. They walked the perimeter of the house anchored to the ridge. Where the beam met bedrock, iron bit into stone with a clean, honest bite. Here and there, the rock bore scars, shallow channels, chisel marks from the season when the house was only hope and sweat. No scar was wasted. Each one had become a path for water, a cradle for a peg, a place where pressure had found a friend. Some foundations are beautiful at a distance. This one was beautiful up close, in the language of usefulness, a beauty the eye almost misses because the heart recognizes it first. Obedience has a shape, the wise builder thought, and the thought moved through him like warmth. Not rigid, not brittle, but supple enough to embrace the strength that does not move. Obedience is not the fear of falling, it is the love of standing in the right place. Again and again, until standing becomes song. They sat together on a low shelf of stone and let silence lengthen. Sometimes the soul must cool before it can take a better imprint. The valley below offered small proofs of mercy, women laying damp blankets over warm stones, children launching reed boats on newborn rills, an old man resetting a boundary marker the flood had nudged. Everything was finding itself again, not by pretending the storm had never come, but by drawing strength from what had not been shaken. So it is with hearts. They do not heal by forgetting, they heal by fastening to what remembers. The foolish builder traced a finger along the seam where rock met house and exhaled slowly. I wanted a view, he admitted. I wanted quick rooms, warm lamps, a window the sea would bless. I thought the ground would be grateful for my trust. His voice softened, almost like prayer. But ground is not God. Only God keeps the vows we build upon. He looked up, and there was no bitterness in his eyes now, only a thinned pride, which is the beginning of strength. The rock is not just safer, he added, searching for the truer word. It is true. And truth is a comfort longer than comfort. Oi! Wind braided the grasses in long, slow movements, and the house answered with a contented hush, with speaking peace to wood, iron to stone, a choir of materials held in right relation. The wise builder rose and checked a fastening out of habit more than fear. Rituals born in storm remain companions in calm, not because danger persists, but because gratitude likes to work. He showed the other man the hidden channels cut when days were long and unremarkable, how a trench began where the eye would not think to dig, how a small slope carried what might have flooded a wall, how a modest lip of stone turned rushing water into a less ambitious flow. None of it would have been noticed by those who measure life only by speed. All of it had been noticed by the night. The other man nodded. Love does this, he murmured. It takes time before time is asked for. It spends strength where no one claps. It listens to the ground and calls the listening worship. Oi! The rock beneath their feet offered more than safety. It offered meaning. It gathered their separate stories, the caution of one, the costly learning of the other, into a single parable wide enough for every listener who would ever hear it. In that parable, storms did not play the villain. Pride did not play the hero. God alone was the constant, the foundation that had offered himself before either man had lifted a beam. For this rock has a name the hills would sing if stones were given mouths. He is the Word made ground, Christ, the cornerstone, the faithful bed upon which every lasting life is framed. In him, obedience is not the fear of failing tests, it is the joy of fitting truth. In him, trust is not naive quietness, it is the strength to remain while winds spend themselves. In him, love is not a gauze draped over weakness, it is the very weight that keeps the soul from drifting. They did not preach to one another. They let the world preach to both of them. Wave to shore, wind to grass, beam to rock, everything rehearsed the same gentle creed: stand here. Build here. Rest here. Toward midday, villagers climbed the path carrying bread still warm, figs gathered after the rain, and jugs of bright water. Mercy likes to arrive with simple things. They greeted both builders without sorting them into lessons, for the valley had learned a humbler generosity overnight. A child asked if houses could be friends. The wise builder smiled and said they could, if the ground beneath them was at peace with itself. The child laughed, as children laugh when something too large fits into their small hands for a moment. They ate in the doorway where shade cooled the threshold and light rested on the floor like a visiting angel. The foolish builder chewed slowly, tasting not only bread but the strange new flavor of freedom, freedom from having to defend what had not defended him. He set his cup down with care and turned his whole body toward the ridge, as if to align bone and intention with the line of stone that had kept its word. "I will learn the tools of slowness," he said at last. "Teach me where to cut channels, how to listen to grades and grain, how to make peace with difficulty so that my children may make peace with storms." The wise builder nodded, happy the way teachers are when students arrive with questions Rain has written. "Begin with the ground," he answered gently. "Ask it what it will not do. Honor that, and it will carry what you cannot." Oi! Afternoon wandered in without fanfare. The sky, rinsed of its heaviness, drew a high, fine veil of cloud that softened edges and taught the eye to rest. Below, the shore still bore the script of night: drifted timbers, scalloped sand, pools that mirrored sky, but even those wounds had become instructional beauty. The sea kept its distance with a new politeness, as if remembering the line between invitation and invasion. Both men rose and began to work, slow, simple work that felt like prayer with the hands. They lifted modest stones. They set markers where water should go when the next hard sentence of weather tries to run through punctuation it does not own. They spoke little. When they did, their words chose usefulness over flourish, truth over comfort, encouragement over display. The house kept them in its quiet company, and the rock beneath them kept them in its promise. As shadows lengthened, they paused once more at the edge of the ridge. The foolish builder looked down at the place where sand had almost convinced him it was worthy of vows. He did not despise it now. He blessed it, for showing its nature promptly enough that a soul could still turn while there was day. Then he looked to the stone and blessed it more, for remaining itself when all else was busy being season. Evening spread its cool hand over the land. The first small star pricked the linen of sky, and a hush, not of fear, but of fulfillment, gathered on the height. The lesson had moved from lips to limbs, from mind to muscle. They would sleep, and in their sleep the body would learn again what the spirit had decided: to belong to the rock, to become its friend, to let a life lean without apology upon what had been faithful before any storm had a name. Let this settle in you now. That the rock is not an idea to admire, but a person to trust. That every obedient choice, each quiet yes when the world asks for show, fastens another hidden bolt to an everlasting foundation. That love, when it meets truth, becomes weight enough to steady rooms where children will laugh without knowing why they feel safe. May the soul feel cool stone underfoot even while walking across the shifting hours of a human day. May the heart learn the hymn the timbers sang through wind, and sing it in traffic and in tears. May every plan find the humility to ask, where is Christ in this? Where is the rock? And having asked, may it wait long enough to hear the answer, and build there. The day had grown warm again, and yet the memory of the storm lingered, not as fear, but as a kind of wisdom folded softly into the heart of the land. The fields glistened where water had once raged. The river ran smoother now, its current slower, its sound deeper, as though it too had learned humility. The two builders sat upon the ridge in silence, the younger man tracing small patterns in the dust with a stick. He looked toward the sea, toward the ruins that once framed his comfort, and spoke without bitterness. It wasn't the storm that destroyed it, he said quietly. It was what I trusted before the storm came. The older builder nodded, his eyes on the horizon. Yes, he said. Storms don't create weakness, they reveal it. They show us what was hidden beneath the calm. The winds are only mirrors, and the rain is only truth in motion. Oi! The younger man let the words rest between them for a while. He thought of the sound the sea had made that night, that strange, holy sound of something greater than himself. It had terrified him then, but now, remembering it, he felt a strange peace. The storm had not been against him. It had simply told the truth too loudly for him to ignore. He drew another line in the soil, then let the stick fall. Do you think God sends storms to test us? He asked softly. The older builder turned to him and smiled. I think he allows them to teach us, he replied. And maybe that's kinder than never learning at all. A life without storms might look safe, but it would stay shallow, rootless, unanchored. Faith grows deep only when it has to hold on to something stronger than itself. The younger builder breathed out slowly, watching the wind ripple across the tall grass. I thought I was strong, he said. You were, the other answered. You built with hope. But hope without depth is like light without warmth. It shines, but it cannot last through the night. Oi! Below them, children were laughing near a stream. They had found small branches and were letting them float downstream, cheering when the sticks navigated a bend or avoided a rock. The sound of their joy rose through the valley, clear, unguarded, free. It was the sound of a world that had forgiven the storm already. The younger builder smiled faintly. I used to think storms were punishment, he said. "But now I wonder if they're just part of the mercy, God shaking away what cannot stay, so only what's real can remain." The older man's gaze softened. "Yes," he whispered. "Mercy often looks like loss before it looks like love." Oi! The wind brushed through the grass again, carrying the scent of salt and clean stone. The sea's voice had changed, no longer a roar, but a hum, a low, living reminder that peace can still sing after ruin. The older builder rose and began to walk the ridge slowly. "Come," he said. "There's something I want to show you." They followed the path to a cliff edge where the storm had bitten deep into the rock, exposing veins of quartz and mineral light beneath the surface. In the broken places, beauty had appeared, shining lines of white crystal threading through the darker stone. The younger builder knelt and touched one. "It's beautiful," he said, surprised. The older man smiled. "That's what storms do," he said. "They break what hides the light." The younger man looked closer. The cracks glittered like scars kissed by sunlight. Each one a record of pressure, each one proof that endurance had meaning. He realized then that the same could be true for the soul, that pain, when surrendered to God, does not mar the heart, it refines it. They walked back toward the house on the rock. The sun was beginning to lower, turning every droplet of water into gold. The wise builder paused at the threshold and turned to the younger man. "The storm was not your undoing," he said gently. "It was your beginning. Now you build with knowledge, and knowledge joined with grace becomes wisdom. And wisdom," he added, "is simply faith that has seen the storm and still believes." The younger builder nodded, his eyes bright with both gratitude and repentance. "I see now," he said. "The storm was never the enemy. It was the teacher that brought me here." He looked out once more toward the sea, the waves soft as breath against the sand. He felt no anger toward them now, only awe. The same power that had once terrified him was also the power that could wash the world clean. As the last light of day stretched across the ridge, the two builders stood quietly side by side. The air was calm again, and the earth, though scarred, was at peace. Above them, the clouds had turned from grey to silver, then to soft rose and amber. The storm had given birth to a more honest kind of beauty, the kind that does not boast of perfection, but of survival. The younger builder closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for what you've broken, and for what you've built through the breaking." The older builder bowed his head, his heart echoing the same words. And together they let the silence of understanding fill the sky. Let this truth rest gently in you now. Storms are not sent to steal your peace, they are sent to reveal where peace is truly found. Every gust, every wave, every long night of waiting teaches the soul one lesson again and again, that beneath the surface of all things, there is a rock that will not move. Evening gathered like a soft cloak across the ridge. Light thin to honey, and the valley breathed that quiet only known after hard weather. The younger builder stood near the threshold of the house on the rock, looking down toward the shore where his first home leaned in its brave, failing grace. Between what had been and what would be, his heart stood in the doorway. No accusation rose within him now. No defense either. Only truth. and with it, the tender mercy that truth always carries when it is finally welcomed. He set the coil of rope at his feet and unrolled his blanket upon the stone, not as a bed of exile but as a beginning. The rock pressed its cool assurance through the woven fibers, steadying breath and thought alike. He watched the last lines of sunlight lift from the sea and felt, in that lifting, a vow rise from within, a vow not forged from panic, but from gratitude. He spoke softly, the words small enough for evening to hold. I wanted beauty first. Now I want honesty. I wanted speed. Now I want depth. I wanted my house to please the eye. Now I want it to keep the soul. Oi! He walked with the wiser friend along the perimeter where beam met bedrock. Together they traced the humble genius of each fastening, each channel cut in former days when no one was watching. The younger builder's palms learned the grammar of trust, how stone receives a bolt, how slope refuses a flood, how a modest lip sends water toward mercy rather than into ruin. Nothing grand, nothing theatrical. Only a series of small fidelities that, woven together, become endurance. He paused at a scar in the rock where chisel had once argued with stone and lost, then learned to listen. The line caught the low light and shone like a river of silver. He smiled through damp eyes. Even correction can become a path, he whispered. Especially correction, the older man answered with a warmth that did not require many words. They returned to the doorway and sat where shade and afterglow shared the threshold. From below drifted the voices of children gathering driftwood with their parents, rebuilding cook fires, retelling the story of the night in versions gentle enough for small ears. The village had already begun its sacrament of repair, ordinary hands choosing tomorrow one small task at a time. The younger builder felt drawn into that liturgy. The storm had scattered him, now joining would gather him again. He rose and walked a little way down the path, stopping at a flat, low shelf of stone. There he knelt. Not in punishment, in alignment. Knees upon rock, spine under sky, breath steadying inside a body that had finally ceased arguing with what is real. Words formed slowly, the way roots find their way through soil that has learned to welcome them. Lord, thank you for letting truth arrive in time. Thank you that the sea told no lies and the wind kept no flattery. Thank you that the rock remained when everything else rehearsed its leaving. Teach these hands the courage of slowness. Teach this mind the joy of listening. Teach this heart to love the weight of obedience until obedience becomes rest. Silence answered, not empty, but full. The kind of silence that says, "You are heard." He stayed there until the first star appeared and the first evening coolness placed its palm upon his forehead. Rising, he looked once more toward the shore. Grief and hope shared the view without quarrel. Loss told the truth of yesterday, the rock told the truth of tomorrow. The older builder brought a small bundle of tools, a level worn smooth by years of palms, a plumb line coiled like a quiet serpent, a chisel that had learned patience, a hammer whose head carried the dignity of many corrections. He set them down as one might set bread and cup upon a table. "These are not weapons," he said with a half smile. "They're invitations. They ask you to agree with gravity and grace at the same time." They began with marks, simple, chalk blue kisses on stone that turned intention into place. The plumb line fell and found true. The level settled and taught the eye to trust what the body already knew. They measured, stepped back, adjusted, measured again. No hurry, no pride, no audience. Only the calm pleasure of agreement with what holds. The younger builder noticed how every decision now included tomorrow. Angles were chosen not for display but for rain. Distances were set not for ease but for endurance. Even the doorway was placed so the prevailing wind would be welcomed without being obeyed. He felt his soul acquire the same instincts, a turning toward what keeps, a gentleness toward future weather, a willingness to be shaped by truth before truth must shout. Night deepened. Lanterns pricked the valley like seeds of light sown into dark furrows. A neighbor arrived with bread still warm and a wedge of cheese wrapped in cloth. Another brought figs and a jug of water bright from a spring that sang without needing to be seen. Community encircled the lesson until the lesson felt like home. The younger builder tasted the bread and discovered a sweetness not from honey but from hunger met by mercy. He spoke again, and this time the words carried weight that had learned how to be gentle. I thought starting over would feel like shame. It feels like breathing. The older man nodded, eyes reflecting lantern flame. That is what grace does, he said quietly. It turns endings into doorways and gives them hinges strong enough for joy. Oi. Later, when the village had faded to a hush and the sea had resumed its old, forgiving rhythm, the younger builder stood alone beside the first stake set into rock. He tied the line, pulled it taut, and watched it hold its straightness like a promise. In that thin, unwavering thread, he saw the narrow way, not cramped, but clear. A path that refuses the seduction of ease and chooses the companionship of truth. He loved it. Not because it flattered him, but because it freed him. Tomorrow, he said to the line, to the stone, to the starlit sky, we begin. He rolled his blanket at the doorway and lay upon it, back to stone, face to the tender constellations that had watched generations learn these same lessons. Sleep came without argument. Not the sleep of exhaustion's collapse, but of consent, a rest that trusts both God and ground. In the last waking inch of thought, he saw his old house one more time, lamplight tilting within, the porch leaning like a goodbye that had finally found its kindness. He blessed it. Then he blessed the rock. Then the blessing turned to breathing, and breathing to sleep. Let this realization rest within you now. That repentance is not a backward gaze but a turning of the feet. That beginnings often arrive wearing the clothes of endings. That the soul grows spacious when it agrees to be small upon the rock that does not move. May every plan you make kneel first upon truth. May every measure you take include the weather yet to come. May the love of God make slowness sweet and obedience light. And when morning returns, as it always does, may your hands begin again where wisdom waits. Upon the rock. Morning arrived softly. Not with color first, but with warmth, that tender weight of light pressing through mist, turning dew to pearl. The valley exhaled in slow peace. Every surface that had once shuddered beneath rain now glittered, for what endures always finds a way to shine again. The younger builder woke before the full light and sat up upon the rock. For a moment, he did not move. He listened, not for wind or thunder, but for the small, steady sounds of a world healed by truth. Somewhere a bird sang a single note, and then another, a slow hymn to the mercy of survival. Water, freed from the flood, trickled through the ravine in a voice that sounded almost human, gentle, grateful, unhurried. Even the air seemed to hum with rest. He looked toward the sea. The shoreline had changed again, as all shorelines do. Where his first house had stood, the sand was smooth now, a soft blankness, as if the earth itself had forgiven. There was no ruin, no wreckage, only silence where striving had once been. And that silence felt holy. He rose slowly and walked to the edge of the ridge. The rock beneath him was firm and cool, its surface dark from the night's damp, its strength unbothered by what had passed above it. He whispered to himself, "Nothing that's true is ever lost." Oi! The wise builder joined him soon after, carrying bread and a small clay jug. He handed them over without a word, and together they broke the bread, the simple ritual now heavier with meaning. They ate slowly, the silence between them rich and kind. The younger man finally spoke. "It's strange," he said. "I thought the storm would make me afraid of building again. But now it makes me eager. It's as if I finally understand what walls are for, not to show beauty, but to honor the foundation beneath them." The elder smiled, eyes narrowing in that way joy and wisdom often meet. "When the heart understands its ground," he said, "everything built upon it becomes prayer. Even the hammering, even the waiting for mortar to dry. Obedience is not labor's enemy, it is its peace." They stood in silence once more, letting the morning settle into them. Below, the village stirred, doors opening, fires whispering, voices of children breaking into laughter again. Life had resumed, but the land itself seemed gentler for having trembled. The younger builder turned to his companion. "When the storm came," he said, "I thought God was far. But now I wonder if he was closer than ever, in the thunder that warned, in the wind that tested, even in the rain that revealed what was weak." The older man nodded. Yes. He was in all of it. The storm's voice may sound wild, but its message is always love, to pull us from what cannot hold, and bring us back to what will never fall away. They both looked toward the horizon, where the sun had begun to lift in full, washing gold over the drenched hills. The light caught the stone at their feet and scattered into tiny glimmers, as though the rock itself were responding to worship. The younger builder knelt, pressing his palm flat against the surface. The stone's coolness met his warmth, and in that meeting, he felt something pass between them, an understanding too deep for words, that foundations are not built for beauty or pride, but for peace. To stand upon the rock was to stand within the heart of God Himself. A gentle wind rose, curling through the grass and carrying the scent of wild thyme. The wise builder closed his eyes. "Do you hear that?" he asked. The younger man tilted his head. "Yes," he said softly, "it sounds like the sea, but nearer." "That," said the elder, "is the whisper of understanding. It comes after every storm, when noise has done its work and truth begins to breathe again." The wind moved around them, soft and rhythmic, brushing their hair, lifting the edges of their tunics. Each gust felt like a sentence rewritten, each pause like grace between the lines. The younger man breathed it in, and it filled him not with pride, but with rest, the deep rest of one who no longer strives to prove himself strong, but has learned that being held is enough. He turned toward his teacher and asked, "Do the storms ever stop?" The older man smiled, his eyes kind, but knowing. "No," he said. "But the fear of them does." Oi. For a long while, they simply stood in the wind, two figures on the ridge, their shadows lengthening toward the sea. The house behind them glowed in the full morning sun, its stones shining with quiet faithfulness. Below, the valley shimmered, a patchwork of life restored. Every scar now carried beauty, every broken thing had found its place. The younger builder felt tears gather, but not of sorrow, of release. He whispered, "I see now, Lord. You were never trying to break me. You were teaching me how to stand." The words vanished into the air, carried upward with the scent of rain and light. And in return came the gentlest of echoes, a stillness filled with presence, not heard, but known. He smiled. For the first time since the storm, his heart felt completely quiet. Let that same whisper find you tonight. The soft voice that comes after struggle, telling you that what remains is real. The storm was not wasted. It shaped your trust. You are standing on something eternal now, something that will never move. Rest here, in the understanding that comes after every storm. Afternoon leaned softly over the ridge. Light thinned to a warm hush, and the wind, emptied of its messages, became nothing more than comfort moving through grass. The land no longer explained itself. It simply breathed. The younger builder stood at the edge of the stone and let his shoulders loosen, then loosen more, until even the memory of tension felt far away, like a shoreline seen from a quiet hill. The world beneath him was tidy with peace. Riverbeds returned to their banks, terraces rinsed and shining, sheep nosing dew from the blades. Nothing hurried. Nothing asked. Everything rested in the aftersong of mercy. He did not think very much now. Thinking had done its good work and begun to fold itself, like tools wiped clean and laid gently back in their place. In their stead rose feeling, not sharp, not loud, a low light within the chest, the kind that makes the breath long and even. Gratitude without words. Trust without effort. Presence without proof. He sat upon the rock and let his hands fall open on either side. Palms warm to stone, stone cool to palms. The meeting was a small sacrament, the soul consenting to be held by what had held it all along. The sun leaned farther west, turning water in the distant fields to little mirrors that blinked in unison each time a breeze went by. Bird calls simplified to a few friendly syllables. Somewhere far below, a door closed softly, not to keep weather out, but to keep evening in. The wise builder joined him with quiet steps. He carried nothing now, no tools, no measures, no cautions, only a stillness that seemed to widen the space around them. They did not speak. Speech would have asked the hour to stand up again when God had invited it to lie down. Together they watched shadow crawl gently across the valley floor, not as a thief, but as a blanket. The first coolness touched their cheeks. The rock held its temperature, faithful as a heartbeat. The younger builder's eyes softened at the edges, that tender heaviness which is not fatigue but release. He let them close, then open, then close again, each blink a small surrender to the peace that kept arranging itself in layers, light, breeze, scent of damp earth, the far, steady hush of a contented sea. A heron crossed the air below, wings writing a sentence that needed no translation. It disappeared into reeds and did not disturb them. Even a rival had learned to be gentle. "Listen," the elder said at last, a word so light it barely touched the air. Not to the wind, not to the stream, not even to the birds, but to the silence between them. It was a deep bowl, well shaped by the day, and it held their breathing together without effort. The younger man realized his thoughts had grown too large for the bowl earlier, and now they had been poured out, leaving only what was drinkable. The elder smiled without turning his head. "Foundations teach us twice," he murmured. "In the storm, they teach us to remain. After the storm, they teach us to rest." The words landed like feathers and did not stir again. The younger builder answered with a slow nod. He understood, not with sentences, but with shoulders and lungs and the way his whole frame agreed with the stone beneath it. A ewe called once from the lower slope. A lamb answered, satisfied. From a cottage chimney, a thin blue line rose straight up, a quiet column where the world had finally forgotten to ring itself with wind. Even the sea, tireless in its rehearsals, kept an easy meter, in, out, in, out. The rhythm found him and matched him. He breathed as the shoreline breathes. He belonged to the same patience. The younger builder's hands curled loosely, then opened again, a tide in miniature. His jaw softened. His tongue rested. Behind his closed eyes, light webbed and unwebbed with each breeze across lashes. Nothing pressed forward. Nothing pulled back. Time lay down beside them and pretended to be a meadow. He felt the rock beneath thought now, not as lesson, not as metaphor, but as kindness with weight. It did not need his attention to be true. It did not require his strength to stay. He could nap on it and it would keep vigil. He could forget it for an hour and it would remember him. There was relief in this, the holy permission to stop holding everything together and let something larger do the keeping. A bee stitched clover to clover and did not hurry. Two swallows braided the air and never touched the ground. Somewhere a pail met a wellstone with a small, round clink that says supper will be simple and enough. The world's sharp corners wore felt. The heart's old alarms wandered off and forgot their way back. "Close them," the elder whispered, not a command, an invitation. And so he did. Dark warmed the inside of his eyelids. Sound deepened, the stream a little nearer, the wind a little farther, as hearing put down its tools and became listening. In that inner dusk, faces he loved flickered for a breath, untroubled, smiling, already safe, and then even those faces floated into the same steady background where God keeps all we cannot carry without trembling. A long breath went out of him and did not hurry to return. When it did, it came like gift, not like duty. He felt the rock receive the weight of his ribs, felt the ground gather what his muscles let go, felt mercy do the work he had tried to do alone. No prayers formed, and none were missing. Sometimes heaven answers not with words but with a lap large enough for a tired soul. He rested there, a child again without needing to remember childhood. The elder watched the young man's breathing settle into evening's pace. He turned his palm downward and laid it flat to stone, not to check, but to agree. Beneath skin, beneath rock, beneath history's long weather, the same faithfulness hummed. It asked for nothing. It offered everything. It would be there when stars appeared, there when dew stitched itself to grass, there when morning unscrolled another page of gentleness. He let his own eyes dim. 2 breaths. 3. The counting stopped because rest had learned to count for them. Shadows lengthened into one soft piece. Color stepped back so the world could be all tone and temperature. From the valley, a mother sang, not loudly, not for performance, just enough to teach a child that night is a friend. The melody climbed the slope and lost its edges on the way, becoming part of the air. It touched the 2 upon the ridge and blessed them without asking their names. The younger builder did not hear the last notes. Sleep had come, a clean, sweeping tide. No dreams at first, only the wide, black lake of unbroken rest. When dreams did arrive, they walked slowly and spoke kindly, a door that fit its frame, a window that welcomed light without leaking rain, the line of a roof in right conversation with the stars. Everything held. Everything breathed. Everything belonged. And under every image, the rock, patient, parent, promise. Nothing theatrical. Only endurance turned to comfort. Only truth made tender. Let the same stillness settle over you now. Let thoughts place their heads down and be quiet. Let shoulders climb down from their watchtower. Let the breath become sure, arriving, leaving, arriving, leaving, each wave smaller, each return slower. You are kept. You are carried. You are already on the rock. Rest, and rest again, until the night learns your name for peace, and calls it back to you with every soft, faithful breeze. Night arrived not as an ending, but as an embrace. It came slowly, folding itself around the ridge like a shawl woven from shadow and breeze. The last color drained from the sky until only blue-gray and silver remained, and every bright thing, stone, leaf, water, learned to glow from within instead of from above. The younger builder slept upon the rock, his breathing even, his body shaped to the patience of the ground. The elder sat nearby, eyes half closed, watching the day's last light retreat along the valley floor. He did not keep guard. There was nothing left to guard against, only to witness the peace he had prayed would one day belong to another soul. Above them, the first stars appeared, not hurried, not seeking attention, simply taking their places, ancient watchman content to shine without competition. The moon rose pale and full, its reflection trembling on the softened sea far below. The world, at last, was quiet enough to hear itself breathe. In sleep, the younger builder dreamed, but his dream was no longer storm or collapse. He dreamed of hands, his own, pressing stone into stone, each joining blessed by a rhythm older than language. Rain fell again in the dream, but this time it was gentle, cleansing the work rather than testing it. The sound of it was music, steady, sacred, familiar. Somewhere within that sound he felt a pulse, and he realized the pulse was not only his heart, but the heart of the rock beneath him, beating with the same eternal patience. He did not wake, yet a thought moved softly through his sleeping mind, as calm as breath over candlelight, "I am held." The phrase repeated, smaller each time, until words gave way to knowing, and knowing gave way to rest. The elder leaned back against the stone, letting his eyes follow the moon's slow climb. He thought of the teacher's words spoken on another hillside long ago, of the promise that those who hear and do will stand when rains fall. He smiled faintly. That promise had lived again tonight, not as parable, but as proof. He whispered into the wind, "Your word still builds. Your mercy still holds." The wind answered with nothing but gentleness. It slipped through the reeds, lifted a strand of hair from his temple, and moved on, a messenger satisfied with silence. He looked toward the sea once more. Even there, where destruction had danced so wildly, the tide now wrote smaller stories, thin lines of foam that curved and vanished like blessings spoken too quietly for the world to hear. He saw fishermen returning lamps to their huts, families gathering by low fires, children chasing shadows that no longer frightened them. Life had accepted forgiveness. That was enough. Time began to blur its edges. The elder's head tilted slightly forward, chin resting near chest. His breath followed the same rhythm as the younger's, in, out. A harmony of generations. The rock kept them both, and the night, content with such faithfulness, ceased trying to measure hours. Clouds drifted, breaking and rejoining, their edges brushed with moonlight. Every so often a star slipped free and streaked the dark, vanishing before the wish could form. But the wish had already been granted. Peace was here. It had learned their names. Owls called from distant trees, their low notes neither mournful nor proud, just part of the great slow heartbeat of creation. The air cooled, the scent of wet earth deepened, and somewhere a fox stepped lightly across gravel, its small paws finding the sure places between stones. The younger builder stirred once, turning on his side, his hand finding the edge of the stone and resting there. Even in sleep, he sought the rock, and the rock, steadfast, answered by existing. The dream shifted. Now he stood in sunlight again, the sea calm, his new house half-built but strong. Children's laughter drifted across the sand. Every board glowed with quiet purpose. No pride, no hurry, just work that felt like worship. The dream had no plot, only peace. The elder, sensing movement, opened his eyes long enough to see the serenity on the young man's face. He let his own lips move in a whisper too soft for speech, "Thank you." Then he, too, closed his eyes, and both men rested, student and teacher, foolishness redeemed and wisdom fulfilled, each cradled by the same unshakable foundation. Far below, the tide reached its gentlest breath and began to retreat, leaving the sand smooth and silver in the moonlight. Where the broken house had been, water pooled in quiet shapes. If one looked closely, they resembled windows, each one reflecting the stars above. Even loss had learned how to worship. The ridge, the valley, the sea, all parts of the same great psalm now. No verse louder than another. Every creature rested within the refrain, "Be still, and know." The night deepened, but not into darkness, into peace so vast it needed no name. And in that vastness, two breaths joined the breathing of the world. Two hearts beat in time with the eternal pulse beneath them. No more lessons tonight. Only love keeping watch. Let this night of stillness wrap around you now. Let your own breath find the rhythm of creation's rest. The storm has gone, the rock remains, and you, beloved, forgiven, rebuilt, are safe upon it. Rest deeply. Rest completely, until even dreams learn the sound of peace. Toward the small hours, when even the moon seems to breathe more softly, the ridge kept its gentle watch. The two figures upon the stone lay like notes held long in a lullaby, the elder seated, head bowed, the younger folded to the rock as if returning to the shape of trust. No task waited. No question pressed. Only the slow, patient nearness of God, and the kindly weight of ground that would not move. A breeze wandered up from the valley and combed the grass in long strokes. It carried the faintest smells, thyme bruised by sheep, damp clay cooling, a thread of wood smoke from the last small fires below. The air did not ask to be noticed. It simply arrived and left, arrived and left. Like breath, like tide, like mercy. The younger builders sleep thin to that tender half-waking where the mind is quiet enough to listen and the body remembers what peace feels like. He did not open his eyes yet. He let the world touch his senses one by one, the cool of stone through blanket, the soft rasp of fabric shifting with his ribs, the almost silent talk of reeds far off where water wrote its thin, silver sentences. Thought rose once, tried to arrange a gratitude, then lay back down, content to be feeling instead. He rolled to his back and placed one palm upon the rock. The gesture meant nothing to the night and everything to him. It was a wordless agreement. I will rest where truth is. The stone received the hand without ceremony. Foundations do not perform, they keep. Nearby, the elder roused, not startled, only resumed, as if sleep were a page he had marked with a finger. He turned slightly to face the younger man and smiled in the dark. Even without sight, he could hear the steadiness, breath unhurried, muscles given back to gravity, the heart beating in the lower register of trust. He knew this sound. He had waited for it in his own life, after storms and failures, after wintered prayers, until one night the soul finally chose rest as obedience and found it holy. Far below, the sea practiced its smallest music. Where ruin had stood, moonlight made mild geometries upon the sand, pale windows, a gentle stare, a line that might have been a doorway. The past did not accuse. It rested too. Loss, when it has done its teaching, becomes quiet enough to bless. An owl crossed the slope, its wings saying almost nothing. A fox nosed the path and disappeared, leaving only the soft punctuation of pause. Even the stars seemed to dim a little, not from weariness, but from kindness, so the darkness could be a deeper cup for those who needed sleep. The younger builder opened his eyes at last. Sky. Stone. The patient outline of the house above him, beam and eave, lintel and line, drawn with moon and shadow. He felt no desire to name or judge any of it. Names were for daylight. This was the hour for belonging. He sat up slowly and leaned his back to the wall. The timber gave a faint, friendly creak and was still. Inside the house, nothing moved. Even the lamp, long dark, seemed to radiate a remembered warmth. He spoke, but only in his chest, a sentence too soft for voice. Here is enough. The elder, hearing not words but the hush that follows them, answered with his own silence, and for a while they shared the simplest companionship, two souls consenting to be kept. When thoughts returned, they came like small birds, land, lift, settle, go, never pecking, never clamoring. He let one perch, the face of a child he did not yet have, laughing beside a doorway rightly set. Another, a table with bread, steam loosening from its broken edge. Another still, rain, but not the kind that tests, the kind that blesses gardens and wakes figs to sweetness. None of these asked him to plan. They asked him to trust the foundation that would hold them when they arrived. He noticed, without surprise, that the fear of weather had left him. The sky would do what skies do. The sea would learn its weathers and forget them, learn again and forget again. Beneath both, the rock would remain, and beneath his ribs, a smaller rock, the decision to stay upon the greater one, would remain as well. This knowledge did not sharpen him, it softened him the way dawn softens hills. Strength, he realized, is gentler than he had supposed. The elder spoke at last, voice low enough that the words seemed woven from the same thread as breeze. "Feel how the house is quiet." The younger nodded. "It is not empty," the elder continued. "It is full of its purpose. Walls at peace are prayer." The younger reached to touch the nearest post. The wood had a faint chill, as if it, too, had been drinking the night. He felt the iron somewhere within it, and beyond that, the stone. 3 materials and 1 intention. He closed his eyes again and let the intention hold him. Time loosened further. He drifted between waking and sleep, leaving a lamp lit in each so he could find his way back and forth without effort. If dreams came, they were made of textures, not plots: sun on shoulder, grain under palm, water spilling from a bucket onto clean floor, the weight of a child's head against his chest as rain braided the eaves. Every image ended in the same place, the quiet center where the rock hummed, steady as a psalm that never needs to be finished. When he woke again, nothing had changed and everything had deepened. The valley was a darker silver. The house was a clearer outline. The air had taken on that thin, sweet edge that says morning is somewhere nearby, practicing. He drew his blanket closer and let gratitude rise and fall without sentence. The body knows how to thank when the mind forgets its grammar. He turned to the elder. "Does rest have a practice?" he asked, almost whispering to the stone. "It does," came the answer, kind and certain. "Keep choosing the place that keeps you. Let trusted things be simple. Let necessary things be few. Listen to the ground more than the sky. And when the sky speaks, answer from the ground." The words went into him like water into dry root. They did not wake him, they watered sleep. A pale seam opened on the far edge of the world. The ridge felt it. So did the grass, the reeds, the small bright stones that kept the memory of day under their skins. Night did not resist, it reclined further, giving space to what would enter soon. The younger builder lay back down, not to escape morning, but to meet it rightly, from rest, not from flight. He let the last thoughts fold, one, then another, like clothes placed into a drawer by careful hands. Behind the drawer, the wall. Behind the wall, the rock. Behind the rock, the love that had given them both. His breathing matched what the sea was doing, little vows, kept and kept again. He did not try to sleep. He discovered that he already was. And the elder, hearing that discovery in the rhythm beside him, closed his eyes too. Two lives on one foundation. Two quiets making a larger quiet. The house, the ridge, the valley, the sea, each holding the others, each being held. Let your own body learn this practice now. Place your weight where truth is. Let shoulders loosen toward ground. Let jaw unclasp, eyes dim, hands open. Let breath arrive like a tide that is never late. You are not responsible for keeping the world together. The rock is doing that. You are only asked to rest upon it. Rest. Slower. Deeper. Until the heart's small weather yields to the larger calm beneath it, and every room within you grows quiet as a house that knows its foundation. Dawn rose like a slow promise. The first line of light traced the ridge, soft as the edge of a feather, and touched the two sleepers where they lay upon the rock. It was not a sudden brightness, but a kind unveiling, the kind the soul can open its eyes to without flinching. The air held that still sweetness that only comes when the world has just been washed, the faint scent of rain gone to memory, the cool clarity of new beginnings. Birdsong returned in low, questioning tones, as if creation itself was testing the sound of joy after silence. Each note found its courage, and the morning began to sing again. The younger builder stirred first. He opened his eyes to a sky pale with mercy, blue softened by light too gentle to dazzle. He did not move yet. He simply watched the world wake with him. Every leaf seemed to stretch. Every blade of grass stood straighter. And far below, the sea had turned silver, its waves whispering along the sand like voices made kind through repentance. He turned his head slightly, saw the elder resting still, and smiled. How strange, he thought, that the same sky which had once carried thunder now held so much peace. The same wind that had shouted now only hummed a lullaby. And the same earth that had trembled now offered rest. He sat up slowly, drawing the blanket around his shoulders. The rock beneath him was cool and sure, its strength no longer dramatic, just quietly there, like breath, like grace. He looked down toward the shoreline. Where the ruins of his old home had been, the sand was smooth again, folded into a gentle curve. The sea had given back what it could not keep. The elder woke soon after, blinking once into the light and smiling without surprise. Morning had done its usual miracle. It had arrived without asking permission. He stretched his hands toward the horizon, as though greeting an old friend. "Good morning," the younger builder whispered. The elder nodded. "Good, indeed," he said softly. "Because it follows truth." They both sat quietly for a time, watching the valley blush with sunlight. Mist rose from the fields like slow incense. Huts glowed warm again. Every sound, a gate creaking, a goat calling, a child laughing, carried gentleness, as if the world had decided to speak only blessings for a while. The younger builder broke the silence. "I used to think peace was something we had to find," he said. The elder glanced at him. "And now? Now I see it's something that finds us, once we stop running from where we belong." The elder smiled. "Yes," he said. "The rock does not chase, it waits. And when we return, it remembers us." Oi! They rose and walked along the ridge together. The dew shone like tiny lanterns under their feet, and each step made a soft hush against the morning stillness. The younger builder stopped once and looked toward the horizon, where the sky met the sea in a line so straight it seemed drawn by divine hand. He whispered, "It's strange how quiet can teach more than 1,000 storms." The elder nodded. "Quiet is the language of understanding," he said. "Once you've learned it, every sound becomes a hymn." They descended a little toward the valley path. Here, the scent of earth was stronger, and the sound of flowing water followed them. The younger builder knelt by the stream and cupped his hands, lifting coolness to his lips. It tasted like beginning. He looked into the water and saw his reflection, the same face, yet different. The eyes softer, the lines eased, the spirit within no longer anxious to prove, only eager to live rightly. He whispered to the reflection, "Thank you." It did not answer, but the breeze that passed seemed to carry the gratitude upward, as if to deliver it where it belonged. As they climbed back toward the house, the sunlight struck the walls at just the right angle. The wood gleamed, the stone glowed, and the shadow of the structure stretched long and peaceful behind them. The younger builder reached out and placed his hand against the door frame. It was solid, faithful. He closed his eyes and felt its steadiness through his palm. This was not merely shelter. This was testimony. The elder's voice came from behind him, gentle as always. "Every sunrise is grace renewing the contract," he said. "Between heaven and earth, between the builder and the rock." The younger man turned and nodded. He understood now that the house was not the achievement, it was the prayer. And every morning that the rock still held it, God had answered. He looked once more toward the sea, and for the first time, he felt no pull to return there. The sand was beautiful in its own way, soft, shifting, forgiving, but he had learned that beauty without truth cannot bear weight. Now he desired only what was steady. He wanted his life to echo the same strength that had held him through the night. He spoke quietly, "I will build here, not just a home, but a heart." The elder smiled. "That is what the rock has been waiting for." Oi! They stood together as the day brightened fully. A new rhythm began, the hum of bees, the ring of a distant hammer, the soft clatter of buckets as villagers began their work. The world was alive again, but this time its noise carried peace instead of hurry. The younger builder felt his soul align with it, his heart steady in its cadence. The storm had once made him tremble, now it had taught him stillness. The same sky, the same earth, but a new man beneath them. He closed his eyes and let sunlight find his face. The warmth sank deep, and for a long moment, there was no separation between the world around him and the faith within him. All was one, rock and house, sea and sky, man and maker, each part humming the same gentle truth. Peace is not the absence of the storm, it is the presence of the rock beneath it. Let morning find you, too, in this peace. The night has passed. The storm has done its teaching. The foundation remains. And you, beloved soul, still stand upon it, safe, forgiven, awake to the quiet joy of a new day. The sun climbed fully now, laying its warmth upon the ridge like a blessing that could be seen. Every drop of dew became a jewel for a moment before vanishing back into air. The valley stirred with life, shepherds calling softly to their flocks, doors opening with the humble creak of wood content in its hinges, and the low murmur of voices greeting the day with thanks. From where the two builders stood, the world looked almost new, not because it had changed, but because they had. Their eyes, washed by the storm and dried by grace, saw everything differently now. The rock beneath their feet felt alive, as though the breath of God pulsed quietly within it. It was not merely stone, it was promise. The younger builder turned to his teacher. "What happens now?" he asked softly. The elder smiled, his gaze tracing the far horizon. "Now," he said, "we live what we've learned. Every word, every act, every kindness is another beam set upon this rock. The storm taught us how to build, not faster, but truer." The younger man nodded, his heart steady in its rhythm. He looked once more toward the valley, where the stream shimmered and the houses glowed like small prayers waiting to be spoken. He thought of the people within them, those who would face their own rains one day, and he prayed silently that they, too, would build where truth endures. He turned to the rock again, kneeling to press his hand flat upon it. The surface was warm now beneath the morning sun, but deeper down, he could feel its eternal coolness, the ancient calm that no weather could reach. He whispered, "You have kept me. You have carried me. And I will not forget." The elder placed a hand upon his shoulder. "That's how the rock works," he said. "It does not promise you will never see another storm. It promises that you will never face one alone." Oi! A gentle quiet filled the space between them. The kind of quiet that hums like light behind closed eyes. Even the sea, far below, seemed to echo the stillness, its waves brushing the shore with reverence, as if bowing to the peace that had settled over the land. The younger builder rose, and for a long moment, neither man spoke. The sun warmed their faces. The breeze tugged at their sleeves. Time felt suspended, caught between the end of one story and the beginning of another. The elder finally broke the silence. "You will teach this, too, one day," he said. "Not with words alone, but with how you live. People forget sermons, but they remember peace." The younger builder smiled through quiet tears. He understood. Every action from this day forward, every board he lifted, every path he chose, every moment he forgave or waited, would become a sermon written in patience. The foundation would preach through him. He looked toward the sea one last time. The tide was calm, the sand smooth, the light scattered like handfuls of silver coins tossed by unseen angels. He did not see loss anymore. He saw mercy made visible. He spoke to the wind, to the water, to the world that had once frightened him. "Thank you for showing me the truth." Then he turned back to the rock, and his steps no longer echoed with searching, only belonging. By midday, they had begun to build again. Each movement was deliberate, measured not by speed, but by peace. The elder guided, the younger followed, and between them rose the slow poetry of work well rooted. The hammer's rhythm became a prayer, the sweep of sawdust an offering, the joining of timber and stone a quiet amen. And as the day unfolded, their small labor began to mirror something greater, the kingdom that grows unseen, one faithful act at a time. When the light softened once more, they set their tools aside and stood together in the golden hush. The house, still modest, already looked eternal, not because of its shape, but because of where it stood. They prayed, not aloud, but in that deep way hearts pray when they are too full for words. Their silence rose like incense. The air itself seemed to shimmer. And in that shimmering stillness, a voice, not from sky or wind, but from within everything, spoke through peace itself. Those who build upon me shall never be shaken. The wind passed gently over the ridge, and the two men bowed their heads, not from fear, but from awe. As evening approached, the elder sat by the doorway, watching the horizon fade from gold to violet. The younger builder sat beside him. Neither felt the need to speak. Their work had become their prayer, and prayer their rest. The stars appeared again, each one like a promise rekindled. The moon traced its silver path over the valley, and the sea below answered with glimmers of its own. The whole earth seemed to breathe in rhythm with the rock, a single, endless exhale of peace. The younger builder's eyes grew heavy. The elder smiled and said, "Sleep now, son. The house is strong. The rock is awake." He nodded and lay down upon the stone, his blanket drawn close, his face turned toward the quiet sky. The night gathered around him like a prayer's final word. And as sleep claimed him, his last thought was not of storms past, nor fears to come, but of the unshakable foundation beneath him, God Himself, steady as forever, gentle as breath. Let this peace close the story within you now. Let your breath slow until it matches the tide's calm rhythm. The storms have done their work. The morning has come. And the rock, the same rock beneath every faithful heart, remains. Rest in that truth. For it will hold you tonight, and every night after,